Dragon Tamer. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176 Human Skin Book Page. Meddlesome. Secret human institutions have long studied the use of human mind, but for years, progress has been minimal. It wasn't until the catastrophe, when chaotic matter flooded Earth and some individuals truly awakened their minds, that this targeted research saw significant progress. However, the awakening of mind power remains elusive, and a mind without the ability to harness it is like a child wielding a sledgehammer, unable to unleash its true potential. Liu Ming's use of mind power was similarly rudimentary, but he possessed a newly acquired Lord's Brain Crystal, which promised to further increase his mental power. Without a way to harness such powerful mental power, Liu Ming felt like a poor man guarding a mountain of treasure, unable to reap the treasure. It was against this backdrop that Liu Ming, in a conversation with Chu Xenian, stumbled upon the existence of a telekinetic device, a breakthrough in the field of mind power research. This led to the current scene of him collecting supplies from the storage depot. Indeed, that mysterious telekinetic device is stored on the top shelf of that iron rack. Before I hand it over to you, there are some things I must inform you of, Xiaonen replied with a nod, his expression unexpectedly serious. Liu Ming nodded slightly, indicating that he was all ears, and let him continue. It's rumored that this is a human skin booklet. After our researchers took samples and analyzed them, they confirmed that it is indeed made of human skin. Specifically, it's the scalp of a highly accomplished Indian monk. Xianen's subsequent words sent a chill down Liu Ming's spine, but he remained calm on the surface. Legend has it that the eminent monk lived in the late 19th century and lived to be over 100 years old. During his lifetime, he mastered the use of his spiritual power to a degree unimaginable even in peacetime. During the political unrest in India in the 19th century, opposition soldiers and bandits went to rob the monk's temple. Several thugs fired at him, but he easily dodged them, and the thugs gave up the temple raid, as if they had seen a ghost. He could also move physical objects out of thin air. When he was angry, those who were glared at by him would even feel a pain in their chests, as if they were being hit by a hammer. After his death, his deeds were spread by the common believers, but posthumous fame is obviously not necessarily a good thing. The eminent monk's body was dug up by an Indian warlord, removed from his coffin, and his scalp was cut off, to make these pages of a human skin book that is suspected to be used to cultivate mystical abilities. After the reform and opening up, this human skin book page was auctioned off at the Nanyang auction house by a Chinese ambassador stationed abroad, who brought it back to China and later ended up at our base. What I just said was all about its background. Now I want you to consider it carefully. The previous people who studied this telekinetic device either died or went insane. Even Commander Chu and I, in such a desperate need for power, didn't dare to use it. The human skin scroll. Interesting. I want it. Liu Ming, after listening to Xianen's description, became even more curious about the telekinetic device. He stared at the iron stand where it rested and spoke slowly. Xianen shook his head, and, no longer trying to stop him, took down a historic rosewood box from the top shelf. Liu Ming took the box and opened it, revealing several thin yellowed pages. Only 3 pages? Liu Ming asked, puzzled. How many pages can you make from a whole scalp? Xianen grumbled helplessly. Very good. Thank you, Political Commissar Xian. Let's go. Liu Ming tentatively channeled a trace of his mental energy into the pages of the human skin book, but there was no response. However, that trace of mental power vanished without a trace, as if completely devoured. This convinced Liu Ming that the telekinetic device was genuine. You still have access to redeem other supplies. Don't you need them? Xianen asked, puzzled. No, I'll save it for another time. With this telekinetic device, Liu Ming felt his trip was worthwhile. He could wait until the military and government departments added new items to his collection. After all, most of the items inside could already be obtained through sacrifice. Leaving the storage warehouse, Liu Ming followed Xianen to the armored vehicle garage, where he received an 80% new armored vehicle and its keys. After 1,000 miles, we must finally say goodbye. Brother Liu, take care on your journey, Xiaonan said politely, after escorting Liu Ming out of the military sub-district gate. Commissar Xian, please return. I will always remember the kindness shown by both Commissar Xian and Commander Chu. Liu Ming, of course, was also prepared for the polite exchange. With that, he parted ways with the later famous observer. However, Liu Ming didn't leave the safe zone directly. Instead, he drove to Area F, the survivor relocation site, and found the rooftop of Shed 79. He parked his car at a secluded corner. Several patrol officers, drawn by the sound of the car, came to investigate. Seeing Liu Ming, who hadn't even had time to change into his lieutenant colonel uniform, saluted and walked away. Liu Ming removed his military cap and donned his flame dragon cape, covering his uniform and epaulettes, before entering the rooftop. Compared to the fresh, impeccable clean military sub-district officer's compound, the atmosphere inside the rooftop was smoky and filthy. The stench of sweat, foot odor, and other strange smells mixed together to create a nauseating sensation. The cacophony of children crying, yelling, and chatting was so deafening that it hurt his ears. Crowded and dirty were Liu Ming's first impressions. Everyone received a military blanket issued by the military and government. On the floor lay cardboard and plastic sheets, spread out on the concrete floor or the barren ground. The blankets were placed on top of the plastic sheets. Survivors, wrapped in military blankets, looked lifeless. Hundreds of people crammed into hundreds of square meters. The space looked cramped and dark. Carefully avoiding the survivors, some half lying or sitting, Liu Ming finally found Chen Ziyi, but what he saw filled him with rage. Pa. A tough-looking, middle-aged man with a dragon tattoo on his shoulder slapped Chen Ziyi hard across the face, leaving his old classmate with a raw lip and blood at the corners. I asked you to get some food, and you only brought back this much, and you told me you wanted another bite. Do you want to starve me to death? The man shouted with a righteous air after the beating. Chen Ziyi, already beaten to the ground, sat slumped on the ground, clutching her swollen cheeks. She sobbed, "We only got this much rations. Everyone gets this much, and you didn't even bother to claim them. Fuck your mother. Your mother ran off with someone, leaving you behind like a disaster. You're no good, and now you dare to talk back to me." The man then kicked Chen Ziyi in the stomach, sending her tumbling like a candied horse fruit. She clutched her stomach in agony, but she forced her hand over her mouth to stifle a scream or sob. Everyone else seemed to know the relationship between Chen Ziyi and the man before her. Due to the man's prestige and strength, anyone capable of stopping the situation was absent, so everyone simply watched. Just as the man was about to press on and continue beating Chen Ziyi, a powerful arm clamped down on her swinging fist like a clamp. The man only heard a voice that sprayed spit into his face as he cursed, "You're such a fucking jerk. I'm disciplining my own daughter. Who the hell are you, meddling in my business?" The man, his fists clenched, remained calm, as if familiar with this scene. He spoke with practiced fluency. It seemed this guy had hit Chen Ziyi more than once. If anyone tried to stop him, he'd reveal his identity. Others, hearing a father scolding his daughter, generally didn't say anything. Chapter 177 Such a father, a tragic fate. Pa. Liu Ming was no ordinary man. He retaliated with a slap, knocking him to the ground. He then gave the middle-aged man a deep look, turned around and walked towards the sorrowful Chen Ziyi, helped her up, and walked out of the tent. Liu Ming, how did you get here? Hurry, go back. I'm fine. It's restricted time now. You're not allowed to go out. If you get caught, your rations will be gone tonight. Chen Ziyi said anxiously, while trying to struggle, not caring about the tears on her face. The reason she looked so anxious and seemed afraid to go out of the tent was because the security zone administration had set specific times for going out and restricted times for going out to prevent the refugees from running around. During the restricted times, except for the evolved and the special personnel living in the tent, everyone else could only stay inside the tent and were not allowed to go out. "It's okay, I'm here." Liu Ming forcibly helped her out of the smoky and cold tent. Liu Ming shoved a packet of tissues at his pitiful old classmate and asked, bewildered, "Is he really your father?" Although he'd grown up in an orphanage, never experiencing a moment of family affection, he understood that family affection shouldn't involve physical violence. Chen Ziyi wiped the blood from her mouth with a King Feng napkin, a luxury in the apocalypse, wiped away the tears welling up in her eyes, and began to tell her story. After hearing her story, Liu Ming finally understood the source of the bruises he'd seen on her body the previous time. They were all from the man who had just beaten her. That man was indeed his biological father, a small-time head of a debt collection agency in Wuling City. He specialized in collecting debts for loan sharks. In other words, his father was a member of a gang. Of course, the members of this gang were members who earned a decent income. But in his early years, his father was truly just a serious street thug, relying on his persistence to stay with her biological mother. But before she was even a year old, her mother, unable to tolerate her violent and abusive husband, ran away from home and never returned. Her elderly grandparents took over the responsibility of raising their granddaughter from their unfilial son, but Chen Ziyi's frequent beatings by her father, who would return to show off his power, became an indelible memory of her childhood and even adolescence. It was hard for Liu Ming to imagine that Chen Ziyi, born in such a family, could become the optimistic, cheerful, and enthusiastic girl he remembered. Even more tragically, disaster struck. During their escape, their elderly grandparents tragically perished, leaving only him and his father, who was nothing like a father, to survive. Her father, known to outsiders as a formidable force, was terrified by the monster and now even dared not step out of the roof door, fearing that the monster would kill him. Every day, Chen Ziyi would fetch her own food, but the food delivery person would never give her to. Ever since she brought back the packet of biscuits Liu Ming had given her yesterday, and his eccentric father gobbled it all up, she'd been stuck with one meal for two. More accurately, her father would eat the entire meal and then blame her for not giving enough, leaving her to starve. Gurgle. A strange sound emanated from Chen Ziyi's stomach, causing her face to flush. You're hungry, right? Eat, Liu Ming said gently, pulling out another box of whole grain biscuits and a carton of milk from his pocket like the Riemann. He handed them directly to the girl in front of him. This person's life story was probably even more miserable than her own. Although she had no family, abandoned by some scumbag couple on a cold, rainy night shortly after birth, at least she hadn't been reduced to growing up with beatings. Seeing Chen Ziyi finish half her milk and a few whole grain biscuits, before wiping her lips, and looking at him with a satisfied expression, Liu Ming asked curiously, why aren't you eating anymore? I'm full. I'm saving this for later, Chen Ziyi said contentedly, rubbing her belly. There's plenty here. Eat it all, and I'll give you more. Thank you for your help, Liu Ming. These days, every grain of food is hard to come by. You should save some too. I doubt free food will be distributed forever. Liu Ming glanced at her in surprise. He hadn't expected this girl to see the problem after only one day of free food. According to his memory, after a week, they would need to work as laborers, such as building walls and defenses, to receive food. Tear it open. Liu Ming paused for a moment before pulling out a light blue scroll and handing it to the girl. It was no longer a rare item for him, but it could completely change her life. What is this? Chen Ziyi looked puzzled, but she trusted Liu Ming enough to do what he asked. The next moment, she was enveloped by a shimmering aquamarine light, like ripples on water. A moment later, the aquamarine ripples dissipated, and the bruises on Chen Ziyi's face, the wound at the corner of her mouth, and all the scars on her body vanished. A young fair-skinned beautiful girl with long hair appeared before Liu Ming again. Chen Ziyi stared blankly at the shimmering azure light emanating from her palm, and said in disbelief, have I become a psychic, too? Liu Ming's insight revealed that Chen Ziyi had become an F-rank water healer. The reason he gave her this support class instead of the more sought-after combat class was, of course, to prevent his fragile old classmate from being caught in the crossfire and tragically perishing in the front lines of a monster battle. Liu Ming, thank you, sob. No one has been this kind to me since grandpa and grandma died. As Liu Ming observed his old classmate's physical condition after her class upgrade, she sobbed and threw herself on him, hugging him tightly. Liu Ming, his arms full of warmth, thought, is this the second time I've been held by a woman? Last time it was Jeshingnan, and this time it's an old classmate. What a nice guy I am. This time, Liu Ming didn't push away the girl, who burst into tears of joy, as he had done with Jeshingnan. Instead, he let her hold him for a while. There's a registration point for revolvers over there. Go register. You won't have to live on the rooftop anymore, but can move into the separate sheds reserved for revolvers, Liu Ming said, pointing in a direction. I'll go register first. Liu Ming, you must wait for me. You must be a very powerful revolver. I must thank you very much. You must wait for me. Chen Ziyi reluctantly walked in the direction Liu Ming pointed, looking back every few steps. But to Chen Ziyi's surprise, as soon as he turned and left Liu Ming's sight, Liu Ming returned to the armored vehicle. Inside, he removed his flame dragon cape and army uniform, changing into a black sweatshirt and jeans. He pulled the sweatshirt's wide hood over his face and walked onto the rooftop with an expressionless face. Chapter 178. Do good things and don't worry about the future. He quickly walked over to Chen Ziyi's father's side, his eyes piercing with coldness as he stared at the middle-aged man before him, who seemed to be looking at him with a puzzled expression. There was no need to say anything more to this man. He had already made his decision. With lightning speed, Liu Ming transformed his palm into a blade and struck directly at the back of the middle-aged man's head. The middle-aged man's once fierce, ferocious face suddenly twitched and twisted, and he collapsed to the ground with foam at the mouth. How much strength did Liu Ming have in his hands now? Even if a full-grown saltwater crocodile with a bite force of nearly 2,000 kilograms came at him head-on, Liu Ming would have been absolutely confident of breaking its jaws and ripping it in two. However, Liu Ming had clearly not used that kind of monstrous strength to attack the middle-aged man before him. He only used a little more than the maximum strength of an ordinary person. Otherwise, the man's brain would have been shattered long ago. Even with that single blow, the middle-aged man had already suffered the consequences of his actions. The survivors, accustomed to the sight of the middle-aged man assaulting Chen Ziyi, were suddenly terrified when they saw a stranger rush in and attack without a word. There's a fight. Someone's been killed. Help. The commotion quickly attracted the attention of patrolling military police. Two of them rushed onto the rooftop, pushing through the crowd and shouting, "What's going on? Who's causing this brawl again?" Upon seeing the middle-aged man slump to the ground, foaming at the mouth, their first instinct was to check on him. The back of his head was significantly sunken, clearly showing severe brain damage, if not fatal. They cried out in shock and fury, Who hurt him?" Given Liu Ming's ferocious presence, no one dared to identify him. Instead, the onlookers all turned their gazes in unison, turning to him. The two experienced officers immediately recognized Liu Ming and cast sharp glances at him. One of the younger officers even drew his baton and handcuffs, glaring unkindly at the suspect before him, who had committed intentional injury or even murder. Only an older officer stopped him in time, otherwise he might have already engaged the murderer. "Don't rush, wait," he said, drawing his pistol. They were both ordinary people, and there were still many civilian evolutionists lurking. He didn't want his partner to risk his life by angering a terrifying killer with supernatural powers over a murder case. "Why are you hurting people? Pull off your hat," the older officer shouted, cocking the bolt, his right index finger on the trigger, ready to fire. "Why?" Liu Ming didn't even glance at the black muzzle. With such a small caliber, it would be difficult for him to kill him, even if he stood still. He stalked over quickly and pulled back a corner of his hood in front of the two military police officers, revealing a full beard and eagle-like eyes. The young officer had just arrived for his shift after attending the commissioning ceremony that had rocked the entire safe zone, so he was naturally familiar with the face of this lieutenant colonel, the only one specially promoted from among the civilian evolvers. His previous wariness, as if facing a suspect, vanished completely. Instead, he exclaimed with surprise and excitement, Liu-san. Stop. Liu Ming didn't want his identity exposed, not because he was afraid of his murders spreading. He had killed countless people since the beginning of the year of disaster. He killed whenever he pleased, and anyone who dared to interfere would have to ask if they had the nerve to do it. He concealed his identity because he feared Chen Ziyi would be unable to accept the truth. The young officer immediately understood and fell silent, quietly explaining to his bewildered companion who was standing nearby who the man was. Upon hearing this, another military officer immediately sheathed his gun and asked respectfully, "Sir, what about this guy? It's okay, just pretend you didn't see him. He's not dead. I just damaged his brain, and he's probably in a vegetative state." Liu Ming, perceiving the man's thoughts, waved his hand. He was simply worried about someone dying. After all, the safe zone had just been established, and the monster threat wasn't a major concern for the time being. Maintaining morale among the troops and the people was the top priority. If word of a death reached the higher-ups, they would naturally investigate. And with this happening in their area, the lives of these two young military officers would be difficult. Hearing that no one was killed, they felt relieved. In this critical period, as long as no one died, they could suppress any unrest. At Liu Ming's suggestion, they turned and walked out of the shed. Liu Ming examined the middle-aged man's injuries, confirming they were only injured but not fatal, and prepared to leave. After all, she simply wanted to help her old classmate, not become the murderer of someone else's father. Just as Liu Ming was about to leave the crowd, a familiar figure rushed in. Dad, what happened to you?" the figure cried out, a face filled with grief, as they threw themselves upon the middle-aged man standing in front of Liu Ming. This was, of course, Chen Ziyi, who had returned early. Just as Liu Ming, realizing the situation was getting dire, was about to flee, she unexpectedly grasped the man's head and felt the dented back. The events unfolded clearly. She cried out in a mournful, tearful voice, Who hit my dad? How could they hit him so hard? The back of his head is dented." She had studied medicine in Guangzhou, so she knew the implications of such an injury, and was overcome with grief. The crowd's gaze shifted once again to Liu Ming, dressed in a black hoodie. Naughty. Liu Ming fumed. He couldn't even try to escape now, as Chen Ziyi's angry gaze was already fixed on him. Chen Ziyi's sixth sense was undeniably accurate. She took one look at Liu Ming, and cried out in disbelief, "You? Why you?" Clearly, she had recognized Liu Ming. The thought of her benefactor suddenly becoming her father's murderer was a difficult one for Chen Ziyi to accept. Liu Ming immediately abandoned his attempts to flee, saying calmly, "I didn't kill him, but I'm afraid his brain is damaged. Being a fool is better than being a jerk." Upon hearing this, Chen Ziyi cried out, her eyes hollow and lifeless, as if she had lost her soul. "Wow, why? Why would you do this? He's the last of my family." Seeing Chen Ziyi's despair, Liu Ming was at a loss. Comforting someone would be easier than hunting S-rank monsters. Well, I can only owe that woman a favor. But Liu Ming couldn't just walk away. The only person he could think of who could help him was Chu Yesheng. More than an hour later, after Chu Yesheng had comforted Chen Ziyi for nearly an hour, her emotions finally calmed down. With tears on her face, Chen Ziyi looked at Liu Ming and slowly said, "Perhaps you're right. This might be better for everyone." Hearing this, Liu Ming sighed inwardly. "If you really think so, why is your tone so cold?" But in the end, he could only nod helplessly, secretly asking Chu Yesheng to take care of the poor girl while he prepared to leave. This girl probably hated him deeply, but he would do the same thing again if he had the chance. Liu Ming, didn't expect anything in return from this girl, and she had no ability to repay him. He was just acting out of his inner feelings, just to have a clear conscience. Chu Yesheng quickly chased after him and asked, "Are you leaving now?" "Well, I owe you a favor," Liu Ming replied calmly. "Haha, just saying that is enough. We are about to part. Any instructions, Commander Liu?" At this point, all evolved professionals and awakened within the safe zone's military and political system were speaking by rank. Ko Xianlang had been promoted a level, now a colonel. Ni Kangsong and many C-level evolved professionals had become lieutenant colonels, while she and a few unlucky souls remained majors. Even Liu Ming's rank was one level lower than hers. Naturally, she felt a sense of discontent and spoke with a bitter tone. "Haha, Major Chu, remember, do good things, don't worry about the future. Lieutenant Colonel will be promoted sooner or later." Liu Ming, naturally hearing the bitterness in his woman's tone, laughed and responded with an old saying. He then boarded the Danfeng Mengshi military off-road vehicle, a modified armored vehicle sponsored by Chairman Chu, and drove towards the 3 defensive fortifications of the safe zone. Chu Yeshan watched the military green armored vehicle slowly exit the gate of the eastern safe zone and disappear from sight, feeling a sudden sense of melancholy. I never imagined that in this power-hungry safe zone, the only person I'd actually be willing to exchange a few words with would be Liu Ming, a seemingly clean-cut nerd with no desire for power other than special resources. And yet, this nerd, whom I'd previously considered a loser, was leaving in a hurry. With his departure, I'm afraid I'll have to revert to my cold, protective demeanor. Liu Ming, I don't know when we'll meet again, but I wish you a safe journey. She uttered these final, unspoken words deep in her heart. Third update. This is an extra update for all the friends who tipped me after the release. I still owe 2 more next week. I just got home from overtime, so busy. The project isn't finished yet, and I have more to do next week. I snuck in this extra update for you. Chapter 179. Come with excitement and leave with a wave of sleeves. Just as they reached the barbed wire fence, the massive form of Zerang swooped in at the sound. Hoo-hoo. Zerang grumbled, seemingly puzzled by his master's new strange-looking mount, but he remained obedient, galloping around the armored vehicle. As Liu Ming drove, he took out the human skin pages and began to study them. He was filled with hope for this mysterious telekinetic device. But after more than 10 minutes, apart from having nearly a quarter of his mental power consumed, he had made no discoveries or progress. Liu Ming's mental power at this point far surpassed that of an average person. If such a large amount of mental power had been consumed by an ordinary person, they would have been mentally exhausted, or even completely destroyed. This might be the true reason why those who previously studied these pages met with tragic misfortunes, Liu Ming thought. He vaguely suspected that once the page's bottomless pit of mental energy was filled, the device's magical properties would be revealed. However, now was not the time to use all his mental power, so he reluctantly stored the pages in the rosewood box. As the armored vehicle emerged from the trench outside the safe zone and began its journey towards the outskirts of Wuling, sporadic monsters began to appear. Bang, bang. The armored vehicle's crash-resistant steel beams and protective armor instantly knocked down and crushed the attacking monsters, painting the entire front of the vehicle blood red. As it retreated further from the eastern safe zone and drew closer to the perilous Wuling city, more powerful monsters finally spotted the rampaging, roaring armored vehicle. In the back seat, a heavy machine gun and an ammunition box containing thousands of rounds of ammunition were stored, a gift from Xianen, on the orders of Commander Chu Zenian, to Liu Ming as a token of respect. As these more powerful monsters charged towards the armored vehicle, the heavy machine gun slowly rose into the air, as if controlled by someone. The supporting triangular bracket beneath the gun unfurled and rested on the slowly opening roof. Da-da-da. Da-da-da. Those monsters that escaped the armored vehicle's clutches and insta-charged towards the vehicle with even greater ferocity were instantly ripped to shreds by the heavy machine gun's bullets. Whoosh. After the roaring wave of metal shredded 3 or 4 mutant monsters, the armored vehicle continued its smooth journey towards Wuling City. Under the influence of that invisible force, the tripod was retracted, and the heavy machine gun slowly descended from the armored vehicle's roof. A few dozen centimeters from the rear seat, the invisible force suddenly vanished, and the machine gun plummeted to the seat with a clang. Liu Ming's 6th dimensional perception took in every moment, and he chuckled with satisfaction. The vanishing invisible force had previously controlled the heavy machine gun to fire, which was naturally his attempt to manipulate physical objects in combat. However, this method of manipulating objects to exert force was only the most basic and simplest form of mental power, not worthy of praise. After this simple practical application of mental power, Liu Ming's anticipation for even higher levels of telekinesis grew. If mental power were to transform into a higher level of telekinesis, the resulting transformation would be almost a qualitative change. Meow. Sumi suddenly reached out from the passenger seat, gently brushing Liu Ming's face with its tail. Liu Ming mentally wondered, what's wrong? Master, where are we going now? Are we going home now? Sumi's voice echoed in his mind. Liu Ming was stunned by this. Home? Honestly, Liu Ming simply wanted to leave the eastern safe zone. After all, it offered no real benefit to his current strength. He hadn't yet fully considered where to go. The train station was now filled with the Wall of Ashes, the Stone Fortress, and a host of highly skilled devolved professionals and awakeners. Scarface's 3 giant cat leaders, along with Fangan and Gu Yun, were returning with their flock of evolved cats, so their safety should be assured. While that was their home base, their territory, fundamentally, the stronger they were, the safer it was. Staying there would clearly not improve their own strength much. No powerful individual ever grew up in a safe environment. Almost every renowned individual in later generations rose through the ranks, through repeated slaughter in the wilderness. As a dragon keeper, taming and nurturing dragon pets in the wilderness is obviously much easier. My power level has reached C rank, and I have one more dragon pet available, increasing my 3 over 3 to 3/4. Acquiring a 4th dragon pet quickly is a top priority. After all, each additional dragon pet increases my power dramatically. Besides Dragon Keeper, the fastest and most effective way to increase my power right now is naturally to create the Crimson Hand spell. As the ultimate spell of the legendary Mad Lich, while I haven't yet mastered its true power, it's not necessarily weak. It's been inscribed in the Hall of Legend by that terrifying Lich school, representing the ultimate secret. Secondly, I need to unlock the potential of the Lava Heart and the Ash Fire. If the Lava Hound grows up, it will be a truly high-level monster, with potential comparable to that of the Transcendent. Unleashing the Lava Heart's enhanced power quickly will naturally boost my power significantly. As for the Ash Fire, although its true destructive potential remains uncertain, as a flame bestowed by a near-legendary evil dragon, and infused with the entire demonic seal battle formation diagram, no matter how much one underestimates it, its potential should be no less than that of a 5th level Nirvana semi-saint. Transforming this potential into true power depends entirely on experience and practice. Then there's the power of thought, which he places great hope in. However, this power is too ethereal. He must first research the true function of the human skin pages before considering anything else. Besides this, he can also begin improving his combat skills, swordsmanship, and ancient martial arts. He considers himself somewhat accomplished in the first 2, but he's still at a loss as to what to do with ancient martial arts. The reason he didn't use his privileges to obtain an ancient martial arts inheritance book from the military supply depot was because, with his natural talent for ancient martial arts, it would be difficult to grasp the true meaning of an ancient martial art without instruction, and accepting it would be a waste of his redemption privileges. The only other ways to increase his strength were external forces. Creating gargoyles in the gargoyle lair, and constructing defensive turrets using the turret crafting manual were both quick and easy ways to boost his power. After analyzing these, Liu Ming realized that there were indeed many things he could do to rapidly improve his strength. Raising and nurturing dragon pets, and constructing the Crimson Hand spell naturally ranked high on the list. Raising dragon pets required evolution blood, while the Crimson Hand spell required the blood organs of blood monsters, both of which required hunting in the wilderness. Therefore, staying in the old nest for a long time wasn't ideal for his growth. With this in mind, Liu Ming made up his mind to prioritize improving his power level and strength. As long as the old nest remained free of external threats, he could allow it to flourish. With enough skill, even if a few ulterior motives appeared in the nest, they could be crushed. After a moment of contemplation, Liu Ming turned to look at Sumi and said, "Go hunt." Sumi, upon hearing his master's words, licked his face with anticipation. He knew the prey Liu Ming was referring to was the blood of hunting evolution. Not only Sumi, but even Jizerong, was captivated by this dreamy liquid, even more addictive than catnip. Chapter 180 Hospital Murder, Human Skin Decryption, Part 1. In the Kyandan New Development Zone, east of the city, at the new site of Wuling People's Hospital. This peaceful hospital, boasting the best medical facilities in the entire Wuling region, had become a bloodbath and a haven for countless monsters. The proportion of the injured and the weak far exceeded that of other hospitals in the area. Weakness reduces one's resistance to chaotic matter, making the hospital one of the most frequent areas for cannibal corpses during the catastrophe. Liu Ming, Sumi and Arfei were scaling the hospital's iron fences, having resorted to this desperate measure because the main entrance was occupied by a swarm of roaming monsters. It wasn't that he was afraid to charge indirectly, but rather that his motive was to capture an incredibly cunning monster lurking within the hospital. A brazen charge would surely scare it away, and his journey would be in vain. Time flashed back to an hour ago. After pouring nearly 4/5 of his mental energy into the human skin page for consumption, Liu Ming could already clearly sense a saturated consciousness emanating from the telekinetic device. He found a safe place to park and ingested the essence of the Lord's brain crystal. His nearly depleted mental energy was fully restored, and it surged by about half again. After infusing nearly 4/5 of his newly recovered mental energy, the saturation within the human skin page became even more pronounced. Liu Ming guessed that with 2 more infusions, the secrets behind the human skin page would be fully revealed. By this point, the total mental energy consumed by him was equivalent to that of nearly 100 ordinary people combined. Ordinary people didn't have the same mental energy recovery methods as him. Similar to the King Ming secret book, losing 80 to 90% of their mental energy would undoubtedly lead to mental fatigue, even serious illness, and in severe cases, even death from exhaustion. Hence his visit to the hospital. While recovering his spiritual strength, while hunting for evolutionary blood with his 3 dragon pets, he discovered a horde of cannibal zombies, improvised and assembled, besieging a shelter. As the shelter was finally breached and everyone was slaughtered, the mutant that had orchestrated the attack and assembled the zombies appeared. It was a Lord-type mutant, reaching a high sea level. Liu Ming was overjoyed, akin to a sleepy pillow, and charged out swiftly. However, the incredibly cunning and vigilant Lord Mutant had already spotted him, dispatching his minions to intercept him while escaping. Liu Ming quickly dispatched Arfei and the Holy Fire Demon puppet, but they nearly lost sight of the incredibly cunning Lord Mutant. Fortunately, with clues he had uncovered along the way, he was able to determine that the Lord Mutant had fled back to the Municipal People's Hospital, and Liu Ming followed suit. Seizing the mutant's brain crystal would bring him a significant step closer to unlocking the secrets of the human skin pages. Otherwise, relying solely on the King Ming secret book's training, it would likely take him at least a day or 2 to fully recover his mental strength. After sneaking into the hospital suspected of being the home of a C-rank lord, Liu Ming was met with corpses, mutilated bodies, shattered bodies, bodies strewn across the floor, piled high in heaps. The blood flowing from the bodies formed a pool that practically filled the entire hospital. Surrounding the bodies were no fewer than 100 cannibal corpses. These monsters guarded the hospital's entrance like guards, watching over their food, their eyes greedily gazing at the piled corpses. The corpses ranged from humans, animals, and even demons, though the largest number were clearly the most vulnerable humans, the easiest prey. These monsters, while guarding the entrance, also patrolled like guards. Combined with the overwhelmingly bloody odor, Liu Ming was at a loss for what to do, and Sumi lost sight of her target. Since I've been stumped by you, I'll just use force to break through. With a fierce look in his eyes, Liu Ming ordered, Zhenrong, go and kill the scum at the gate and block the main gate. Don't let any more monsters rush into the building for reinforcement. Arfei and the Holy Fire Demon puppet, keep watch from the sky. If that guy dares to escape, kill him and bring his head to me. Sumi and I will follow Zhenrong and charge in to search for him. The building, presumably the hospital's outpatient department, was where the Overlord mutants sent last disappeared, and it was likely still inside. As Liu Ming gave the order, Zhenrong's massive form burst from the ground, accelerating like a roaring super chariot. The horde of corpses blocking the hospital gate was hurled and knocked over like building blocks by a giant gone mad. Even the pile of corpses in front of the gate was reduced to charcoal by Zhenrong's dragon breath, sending all the monsters diligently guarding the food into a frenzy, surging towards him like a tide. Liu Ming and Sumi cut down several of the monsters blocking their way, and took the opportunity to quickly slip through the main gate. Entering the hospital building, the scent of blood, which had masked Sumi's target's scent, and made it difficult for her to distinguish, had faded considerably. Liu Ming asked, Sumi, can you smell it now? Meow. Sumi shook her head in confusion. What? That scent is gone. I can't smell it in the entire building. Liu Ming exclaimed in shock, understanding Sumi's cry. Could it be that the Lord Mutant had taken flight? Even if it had clearly just entered the building. There was no reason it wouldn't have left behind even a trace of scent. Sumi sniffed rapidly, and the sound of it echoed in Liu Ming's mind again. Liu Ming's suspicions deepened. You said it might still be in there, but now the building is covered in a special substance that seems to have eliminated any scent. It's hard to detect by smell. It seemed this hospital building wasn't a good place either. Several evil dragon spells suddenly appeared around Liu Ming, and he moved forward with even greater caution. The evil dragon spell power he summoned looked much the same as the black token he had previously used, except that the black evil fire swelling around it had been replaced by a grayish black ash-like flame. The strange destructive energy within that flame surged even more fiercely, occasionally radiating waves of intense heat that quickly receded, as if waiting for the final moment of explosion. Liu Ming estimated that each stroke of the evil dragon spell power now consumed 3 to 4 times as much energy as before, and the destructive power contained within it could even harm monsters or evolved beings above the C rank. This surpassed the power of a single shot of his own Scholard Ray. Entering the outpatient building, directly opposite the main entrance, was a circular desk at the nurse's station. The nurse who should have been standing at the desk had vanished, leaving only a half-eaten corpse on the table. Meow meow. Sumi suddenly cried out, looking at the fragment of hand bone, as if she could smell the target's scent again. Liu Ming quickly walked over, picked up the hand bone, and examined it carefully. The hand bone was covered in sparse bite marks from the teeth of an unknown creature. A blood-stained diamond ring adorned the ring finger. The diamond in the center was unremarkable, likely a broken diamond, but it still gleamed with a crystal clear luster in the dim light. Clearly, the mysterious unknown creature that had gnawed off this piece of diamond ring had no interest in it. Liu Ming plucked the ring from the hand bone and tucked it into his pocket. It wasn't that he was interested in the platinum diamond ring, which measured less than 30 centimeters, but rather that he hoped it would help him find the target Lord Mutant. Chapter 181 Hospital Murder, Human Skin Decryption, Part 2. Liu Ming put away the ring and looked around, finding no other clues. The outpatient clinic's entrance seemed incredibly empty. Not even a trace of a monster had been spotted. Confused, he led Sumi back to the clinic. Just as he was about to pass the wooden circular platform at the nurse's station, a sharp, whirring sound like a sharp weapon was heard. Meow. Sumi was about to return to her main combat form when Liu Ming unsheathed his Jufeng to block the sudden attack. Snap. The attack was blocked, but a glob of sticky liquid splattered from the incoming object onto her face. Liu Ming held the hilt of the knife steady with both hands, holding the incoming object steady. He grinned, trying to keep the extremely foul-smelling, sticky liquid from his chin. He looked at the attacking figure, a deeply twisted and deformed figure slowly rising from the circular platform at the nurse's station. It was a malformed mutant, but compared to Liu Ming's 3 fellow mutants, whose whereabouts were unknown, this one was noticeably more deformed and uglier. If I had to describe its appearance, it resembled a massive fleshy mass, its head completely disproportionate to its torso. On what might be called its chest, a series of massive tumors sprouted, cracking like chrysanthemums and opening and closing like strange mouths. The objects attacking him were 2 fleshy tentacles extending from 2 of these cracked tumors. This mass of flesh almost took up the entire nurse's station, yet, like a large disc, it wasn't tall, yet it was still quite huge. Seeing his sneak attack fail, the monster's other mouth suddenly opened, sending sticky tentacles swarming out towards Liu Ming. Liu Ming exerted his strength, severing 2 of the tentacles that were locked in a stalemate with his sharp blade. 2 fragments, each as thick as a human arm, fell to the ground with a clang. Several strands of evil dragon mantra, suspended at his sides, blasted at the vine-like masses of tentacles that surged forward. Rumble. At the densest point of the tentacles, the evil dragon mantra erupted with a bang, sending grey-black flames soaring into the sky, enveloping a vast expanse of them. Even those tentacles not directly struck by the blast were stained with a few wisps of evil flame. Sizzle. As the embers of evil flames burned, the mutant's flesh emitted an eerie sound, like simmering oil. As the embers of evil flames burned, an extremely shrill cry rang out. Like grease or ice melted by the flames, The deformed mutant's tentacles slowly vanished into thin air, leaving only a wisp of grey-black embers on the ground. Some of the embers of evil flame even spread along the tentacles and toward the mutant's torso. Soon, as Liu Ming stared in astonishment, the deformed mutant before him erupted in flames. Its thwarts burst open, hundreds of tentacles flaring out like dancing snakes, frantically whipping at the ashen flames in an attempt to extinguish them. However, the result was counterproductive, causing the flames to consume all its tentacles. With a piercing scream, the monstrous mutant collapsed to the ground. Liu Ming approached and stabbed the deformed mutant's head, only to find it completely silent, reduced to a charred mass of rotten flesh. Even when struck in the vitals, it showed no sign of reaction. Dead just like that? Liu Ming was speechless. He hadn't expected this mutant, a peak D rank, to die just like that. However, he also gained a deeper understanding of the power of his own ashen flames. Those below C rank would either die or be seriously injured. With a wave of his left hand, countless flames, carrying the unfortunate mutant's vital energy, flowed back into its body. Holding the belief that even a mosquito's leg is still meat, he pulled out his magic camera and accepted the readily available offering. He sensed that this offering had its own special qualities. A top tier D rank monster had managed to evade his and Sumi's detection and attack. Of course, this was also due to the mysterious substance that Sumi had sensed, masking its scent. Otherwise, Liu Ming's 6th dimensional perception would have detected it hiding in the nurse's station. The previous battle had occurred and ended in a split second. From the moment the freak mutant attacked to its death, less than 30 seconds had passed, so the noise wasn't very loud. Liu Ming continued walking inside, while Sumi, now larger in size, stood guard beside him with a vigilant expression. After all, the monster's attack hadn't been noticed until the moment of imminent danger, which had made him realize the danger of this place. Although the previous battle had been resolved with seemingly ease, there was no guarantee that a more formidable monster would not appear soon. As he continued exploring, Liu Ming finally discovered some eerie clues. He reached out his hand, grasping at the empty space ahead of him, faintly touching something substantial. He grasped the object and pulled his hand back, gathering the thread-like substance within his grasp. He tugged, but the sticky threads proved surprisingly resilient, resisting the pull and firmly blocking his path. Fire! Liu Ming whispered to Sumi. Sumi understood and extended her tail, blazing with purple flames. Forward. Thin threads, barely visible in the dim light, became faintly visible in the light. These threads, like a dense web, blocked the path, entwining the hospital corridors. Even in the light, human figures could be seen, entangled and stuck to the web. Seeing the all too familiar predatory pattern unfold before him, Liu Ming slowly uttered 2 words, spider silk. It was clear he had strayed into the territory of a spider monster, and ahead lay the web it used to feed. His target wasn't the spider itself, but the brain crystal of the Lord Mutant, which could develop his brain and enhance his mental power. So, he decisively led Sumi to the 2nd floor, figuring the Lord wouldn't be foolish enough to enter the spider monster's territory and be hunted for food. As Liu Ming and Sumi entered the safe passage, preparing to explore the 2nd floor, something struck him, his face darkening. Wow. It was the Lord Mutant's cry, and the source of the sound was clearly from behind layers of spider webs. Burn it all. Liu Ming pointed at the vast web blocking their path, and shouted to Sumi. Roar. A pillar of purple flame instantly erupted from Sumi's mouth, instantly incinerating the steel-tough spider silk into ash. Liu Ming and Sumi headed straight for the Lord's cry. At the end of the path, they saw only a wall, still no sign of their target. Just then, the cry echoed again, from the end of the dimly lit corridor, in the passage leading to the hospital's basement level. Liu Ming glanced solemnly at the passage, finding the cry strange. The Lord Mutant's cry didn't betray despair or a death struggle. Instead, it sounded like a deliberate attempt to lure him in. If you want to lure me over, then I'll grant your wish. Liu Ming made a quick decision. Currently, the only monsters in Wuling that could threaten him were A-level monsters and above. He didn't believe a single A-level monster was lurking in this very hospital. However, the path ahead was uncertain, so he wouldn't risk his life directly. Instead, He used his telepathic power to summon Arfei, Zilirong, and the holy fire demon puppet to follow him, eliminating the need to monitor or fend off the ordinary monsters outside. Raw. The winged claw dragon snake arrived first, smashing through the wall beside Liu Ming. Its massive body coiled behind him like a giant dragon. Within the winged claw dragon snake's massive bulk, the tiny fist-sized body of the holy fire demon puppet could be vaguely seen. Zilirong arrived last, but his enormous frame couldn't even squeeze through the hospital's outpatient department. Like Arfei, it had also broken through a wall and rushed in. Its dark yellow scales were still covered in large patches of uncoagulated blood and scalloped pieces of flesh, clearly having just been through a brutal fight. However, it looked energetic, without a single scar on its body. It was likely that the blood and flesh were left behind by the monsters that had fought it. Seeing his men approaching, Liu Ming waved his hand with satisfaction and led the four beasts to the basement. Let's go meet this lord. Chapter 182 Hospital Murder, Human Skin Decryption, Part 2. As Liu Ming gripped his absolute blade, the protective shields of his silver scale light armor and flame dragon shield layered over him. The winged claw dragon snake shrank to the size of a regular python, and Sumi swirled around him, its body nearly indestructible. As the holy fire demon puppet charged into the basement, Liu Ming witnessed a terrifying sight from its vision. The entire hall, covering over 1,000 square meters, was covered in purple-black translucent oval-shaped ovoids. To Liu Ming's astonishment, a terrifyingly large spider lay crouched within its midst. The Lord Mutant he'd been searching for crouched beside it, hissing and snarling intermittently. Suddenly, the holy fire demon puppet's vision vanished, and with a thud, it was entangled in a jet of spider silk, hurled down to the ground, and bound tightly. Upon being restrained, the holy fire demon puppet immediately unleashed a column of holy white flame, burning and ripping the spider silk that enveloped it, before it could resist for long. However, with a crackling sound, more silk shot towards it. Soon, a ball of spider silk, over a meter high, appeared where the holy fire demon puppet was. Despite its continuous stream of holy white flame, it was unable to tear through the layers of silk, which were stronger than steel. The usually invincible holy fire demon puppet had now met its nemesis. This enemy, unable to break its sturdy body, but capable of restraining its attacks, was precisely its natural enemy. Seeing that one of his minions had been shot down and rendered ineffective before the battle even began, Liu Ming quickly led Sumi and Arfei into the hall. Zilirong, as a special force, remained on the first floor, awaiting Liu Ming's call, ready to break through the ground floor and provide support. Only when he reached the ground floor did Liu Ming get a clear view of the giant spider. This sight made him regret having been drawn down by the Lord Mutant, a rank monster from the insect world. The man-faced venomous spider. The giant spider before him, gazing at his uninvited guest with blood-red eyes, was a truly A-rank monster from the insect world. He hadn't expected such a monster to lurk in this very hospital. Puff. Liu Ming accidentally crushed an insect egg beneath his feet. His expression darkened even more at the sight of the crushed egg. Spider mother. A mother man-faced venomous spider capable of laying eggs was undoubtedly more powerful and dangerous than a regular man-faced venomous spider. Watching the uninvited guest crush its unborn child, the behemoth, nearly 2 meters tall even when crouching, flashed a bloodshot glint in its eyes, and radiated a tyrannical aura as it rose to its feet. Its size-sharp legs were nearly 2 meters tall, and when it stood up, its back nearly touched the 4 or 5 meter high ceiling. Its back was also terrifyingly hideous. A blood-red human face gaped eerily on its back. Though it lacked eyes, nose, or other orifices, Liu Ming still felt a sinister gaze fixed upon him from within. With a swish, the massive creature, nearly 5 meters tall and nearly 20 meters in diameter, reared up, swooping down towards Liu Ming with a gust of wind. Bang! 2 incredibly sharp insect legs instantly slashed through the spot where Liu Ming had been standing, leaving 2 gashes several meters long and over a meter deep on the ground. Had Liu Ming not seen the monster coming and quickly fled with his 2 pets, he would have likely been struck by the scythe. Looking at the marks left on the floor by the slash, Liu Ming doubted that 2 layers of defensive force fields alone could have stopped the blow. As the monster began to attack, Liu Ming could vaguely sense its true strength through its violent aura, the force of its attacks, and the energy fluctuations. It was likely even more powerful than the 3 leading male-level monsters from the 3 tribes that appeared during yesterday's relocation operation. Even though both were A-rank monsters, there was still a disparity in strength. As the spider mother launched her attack, the Lord Mutant, which had been prostrating itself on the ground like a slave before its master, rose to its feet. It stared intently at Liu Ming, and on its ugly, decayed face, Liu Ming seemed to detect a smug expression. Liu Ming took in the scene, having never expected this C-rank lord to have begun to develop intelligence. It seemed its brain crystals were equally potent. Indeed, cannibal corpses can also develop intelligence. Although the brains of humans are destroyed when they mutate into cannibal corpses, as they continue to mutate and evolve, their bodies are reorganized, and brain crystals form within their brains, giving rise to intelligence. While theoretically all mutants will embark on the evolutionary path of developing brain crystals and attaining intelligence, only the Lord Mutant's brain crystals possess the remarkable ability to develop the brain region and enhance mental power. The brain crystals of other mutants also have various uses, though none of them involve developing the brain. Instead, they enhance strength, agility, explosive power, stamina, defense, and ki levels. However, now is not the time to consider the usefulness of the brain crystals, as the giant spider attacks again. Sumi, help the holy fire demon puppet escape. Arfei, help me hold it for now. Liu Ming ordered. Sumi instantly transformed into a flash of lightning and flew towards the struggling holy fire demon puppet. The winged claw dragon snake, donning its evil dragon armor, stood in front of Liu Ming and engaged in close combat with the giant spider. In this cramped underground space, the winged claw dragon snake's speed was of little use. Bang bang bang. The sound of the wall shattering and falling echoed. The 2 behemoths engaged in a fierce claw and bite battle. The winged claw dragon snake was clearly at a disadvantage, its evil dragon armor cracking in several places, and dark red blood slowly flowed from the gaping wounds. The holy fire demonic golem finally freed itself. Its first act was to spin at top speed, transforming into a holy white meteor and slamming into the giant spider, avenging its recent capture. Boom. The giant spider hadn't anticipated the insignificant creature before it could unleash such a powerful attack. The freed demonic golem struck it squarely, its shell instantly shattered by the white fire meteor, and its massive body sent flying backward. Rumble. The entire basement level was shaken by this massive collision, cracking countless floorboards and creating a massive hole in the ceiling. From within, Zedong's cunning eyes peeked down. Zedong, go. Entanglement it. Liu Ming shouted. The giant spider, dazed and severely injured by the holy fire demonic golem's blow, was still recovering, making it the perfect time to seize the opportunity. Hearing its master's call, the Neo dragon salamander immediately crashed headfirst onto the floor, surging through the newly created hole and directly onto the spider mother, who had been sent reeling. It opened its maw, studded with sharp fangs, and bit down on the spider mother's already bloodied wounds from the explosion. Sumi and Arfei roared, leaping forward to join the attack. The frantic biting was met with an agonizing, high-pitched scream from the spider mother. The blood-red humanoid face on its back grew increasingly distorted and hideous, its color radiating a vibrant crimson. A high-pitched howl, like a human's, echoed from the face on the spider mother's back. Combined with the spider mother's own cries, it wrought a psychic assault far beyond the capacity of ordinary humans. Liu Ming and his 3 dragon pets experienced a splitting headache, nearly staggering. Only the holy fire demon puppet, completely devoid of psychic power, remained unaffected, continuously firing pillars of holy white fire at the giant spider's wounds. The 3 dragon pets closest to the giant spider, bearing the psychic impact head-on, were losing their speed and nearly collapsed. The Lord Mutant, however, with its superior psychic strength, withstood the psychic assault. Liu Ming also managed to hold on. After several rounds of mental strengthening, his mental strength was now no less than that of the Lord Mutant. However, he feigned collapse, half kneeling on the ground with his sharp blade in hand, feigning agony. The Lord Mutant fell for it. Seeing its foe nearly cornered, it braved the overwhelming mental assault, brandishing its clawed hands and charging at Liu Ming with a snarl of teeth. With a thud, just as the claws of the mutant, formidable in mental strength, but weak in melee combat, were about to strike him in the face, Liu Ming instantly stood upright. He raised his sword, slicing smoothly across the lord's neck in an instant, severing its head and body. Even after its head fell to the ground, the Lord Mutant struggled frantically, its claws still lashing out at Liu Ming. Liu Ming shook his head and plunged the tip of his knife into the monster's forehead. It wasn't that he didn't want to kill the Lord directly with a direct attack on the head, but rather that he feared accidentally shattering the Lord's brain crystal. He was cautious, deciding to stab it twice more. After slamming the knife into the monster's brain, the struggle finally ceased. However, Liu Ming had no time to extract the brain crystal before he rushed back to the giant spider, which was still screaming frantically. The 3 dragon pets, though already shaky, struggled to entangle the giant spider, allowing Liu Ming to repeatedly drive his knife into its pitifully small head. Puff, puff, puff. More than a dozen strikes finally silenced the giant spider's screams, but the human face on its back continued to scream, its massive headless body struggling frantically. Its 6 razor-sharp insect legs lashed out, leaving deep wounds on the 3 dragon pets. The flesh at the wounds quickly turned black and rotted, clearly carrying a deadly poison. Liu Ming then leaped onto the spider's back and continued stabbing. After dozens of slashes, the human face on the giant spider's back was finally shattered, and the intense mental shock finally ceased. Bang! The spider mother's massive body collapsed to the ground. With a clatter and a thud, Liu Ming leaped from the giant spider's back and crushed several unhatched spider eggs. He quickly summoned Kamenwen, who, with a slightly solemn expression, immediately began to heal the 3 dragon pets. The 3 dragon pets had recovered from the dizziness and shakiness of the mental shock, but they still felt a little sluggish. The wounds inflicted by the spider mother had already begun to rot and stink. Kamenwen's tranquil light and the healing power of the nature's crown slowly healed them, but some of the toxins remained, like maggots in the tarsal bones, unable to be dispelled. Kamenwen was exhausted from treating the 3 behemoths, nearly vomiting blood, but he was still powerless against the toxins. Liu Ming had no choice but to give up and let Kamenwen go back to rest. The 3 dragon pets had largely recovered from their injuries, though they were still suffering from the poison, their strength not yet at its peak. Liu Ming slowly approached the terrifying monster that had forced him and his 3 pets into this predicament before finally slaying it. Now was the time to harvest the spoils. The A-rank human-faced venomous spider. This spider mother from the insect world was a treasure trove. Spider crystals, spider silk, spider armor, spider legs, spider fangs, spider eyes, and spider faces were all rare treasures, each with its own unique uses and invaluable. Even the spider eggs scattered across the ground were of great use. What truly fueled Liu Ming's eagerness to plunder the spoils was the spider mother's spider crystals. This precious treasure, possessed only by the spider mother, not ordinary venomous faced spiders, could be considered a higher level treasure of the same type as the Overlord's brain crystal. The combination of the spider mother's spider crystal and the Overlord's brain crystal revealed the secrets of the human skin page. Liu Ming, impatient, immediately had several of his dragon pets fend off the monsters that had arrived upon hearing the noise, and began to use these 2 treasures. He opened the 3rd Overlord brain crystal he had obtained. As soon as he swallowed this essence, its energy far surpassing all previous ones, Liu Ming's blood seemed to boil, and a surge of heat rushed to his head. It felt as if the legendary 5 flowers of gathering at the top of the head had been opened from above, and for a moment, Liu Ming felt a sense of relief. A sense of comfort washed over him, as if he had returned to his mother's womb. His mental power, nearly depleted, instantly returned to normal, slowly increasing. By the time the heat faded, it had risen by nearly 70%. Liu Ming immediately channeled all of this energy into the pages of the human skin book. With the influx of mental power, the mysterious telekinetic device finally began to stir. A faint white light emanated from Liu Ming's hand, and it slowly hovered above his chest. With a click, as Liu Ming's mental power once again neared exhaustion, the mysterious object fell helplessly onto his legs, where he sat cross-legged, as if missing the final key to unlock the door. Liu Ming picked up the still warm spider mother crystal. This precious treasure's use differed from the overlord brain crystals. It gradually increased his mental power. He grasped it in his hand and channeled his own mental power into the spider mother crystal. Countless transparent substances slowly floated within the crystal, these invisible spiritual sources of power. Liu Ming's mental power devoured these mysterious substances with voracious abandon. Soon, his depleted mental power was fully restored, and even increased by nearly 10%. While this rate of improvement wasn't as rapid as the brain crystal, it was more gradual. Furthermore, the spiritual power boosted by the spider mother crystal source material wasn't contaminated by impurities or the mad will of the overlord's mutants, unlike the brain crystal. Furthermore, the source material within the spider mother brain crystal had many other uses beyond simply developing the brain and boosting mental power. Once his mental power was restored, Liu Ming, like a gambler who had just won a losing bet and immediately returned to the casino, immediately channeled all his mental power into the telekinesis device. After most of this spiritual energy had vanished from the bottomless telekinetic device, the human skin page slowly floated into the air, emitting a white star-like fluorescence. Within the starlight, ancient and mysterious patterns and symbols emerged one by one, immersing themselves in Liu Ming's vision. As the last symbol sank into his sight, the enigmatic human skin page fell like dust, swept away by the air currents of his breath. The secret of the human skin page was finally revealed. The symbols that had just shone into his vision formed a manual, the Brahma secret treasury of the four elements of earth, fire, wind, and water. This manual contained only a few words, yet was incredibly difficult to understand. Its core tenet was the cultivation of earth, fire, wind, and water, the four elements that, according to Buddhist legend, constitute the universe. Cultivating the earth element allows one to master the spiritual earth treasure. The fire element allows one to master the spiritual fire treasure. The wind element allows one to master the spiritual wind treasure. And the water element allows one to master the spiritual water treasure. Ultimately, the four elements unite to create the Brahma secret treasury of the four elements. This is the profound method of cultivating the power of mind that the eminent monk spent a lifetime to comprehend. Unfortunately, he ultimately only achieved the wind pole of the four extremes, mastering the power of the wind treasure and imbuing his mind with the power of wind. The other three extremes in the final Brahmid treasure are merely mirages. However, from the perspective of a key practitioner, Liu Ming believes this method is 99% feasible. This chapter, over 4,000 words long, is logically and illogically worthy of our support. Please subscribe, recommend, reward, and vote. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183, The building is collapsing. Searching for supplies. At the moment the Lord Mutant was finally annihilated by Liu Ming, its final burst of mental energy radiated like a candle in the darkness, attracting countless monsters like flies to light. Raw, a pure strength-based mutant, 3 times the size of its companion, sprinted heavily into the hospital lobby. With a crackling sound, the wall rapidly crumbled under the combined pressure of its heavy footsteps and immense weight, sending rubble raining down on Liu Ming's head. Already devastated by the recent battle on the basement floor, the first floor had already buckled under the weight of Zhenrong's tens of tons of weight. With the added pressure of the swarm of monsters, the floor collapsed with a bang. Countless rubble from the ceiling rained down on Liu Ming and his 3 dragon pets, but was easily blocked. Zhenrong activated his earth gravity field, trapping all the debris outside, sometimes even bouncing off. The monsters that had just rushed down from the basement weren't so lucky. They were repeatedly struck by rubble, some even crushed to pulp by large slabs of wall. Liu Ming, in this critical moment as the entire floor collapsed, remained composed and composed. He didn't rush to escape the building, but instead quickly gathered the spider eggs scattered across the ground. These eggs were of great use and couldn't be left buried in the darkness of the earth. After Liu Ming had gathered most of the spider eggs, he began to prepare to break out of the underground with his 3 dragon pets. Roar, roar, roar. The immensely large, purely force-based mutant, standing nearly 4 or 5 meters tall, suddenly leaped from the ground floor, knocking Arthur, who was soaring with Liu Ming, into the rubble. The immense force of the impact threw Liu Ming off the back of the winged-clawed dragon snake. He somersaulted mid-air, landing safely on the ground thanks to the gliding effect of his gliding boots. Jizeri Rang had already jumped out of the underground first floor, but seeing his master and companions being shot down, he immediately became angry and jumped down again to pounce on the equally huge pure strength mutant. This was a sea-level pure strength mutant. It and Jizeri Rang, the two behemoths, immediately began to wrestle and bite each other. Slowly, the mutant gradually fell below under Jizeri Rang's attack. Boom boom boom. The foundation of the entire building was shaking in their fight. Seeing the walls and reinforced concrete pillars begin to crack, Liu Ming suddenly had an ominous premonition in his heart. He shouted, "Go, Jizeri Rang." Just as Jizeri Rang was about to give up the confrontation with his opponent, who had been completely suppressed by him, and evacuate with Liu Ming, a ground-shaking tremor was heard. Rumble, rumble. The 16-story hospital building, already unstable from the demolition-like assault of the 20 to 30 meter wide Spider Mother, finally collapsed after the clash between Jizeri Rang and the equally violent C-class pure strength mutant. In a semi-detached villa in a mid to high-end residential complex not far from Wuling City Hospital, several sturdy men whispered warily, observing the situation outside. "Brother Luo, why did the monsters leave on their own?" One of the men, armed with a sharp military shovel, turned to his companions in confusion, watching the monsters that had been roaming outside retreat like a tide. "How should I know? Maybe they were lured away by something." The voice spoke, seemingly unconvinced. After all, in this sparsely populated area near the city's outskirts, aside from the much publicized evacuation operation a few days ago, who would actually lure away the monsters? They had been planning to evacuate to a safer location, but their leader, Luo Je's wife, had been scratched by a monster, and the wound had become inflamed and festered, leaving her unable to move. They had to search for medicine for her, delaying their evacuation. Boom. Just as everyone was discussing whether to search for supplies, while the monsters retreated, hoping to find anti-inflammatories, antibiotics, and other medications, a resounding explosion was heard. "What's that?" Luo Je's pupils constricted, and he exclaimed in surprise. He stared intently, a look of profound horror on his face, and exclaimed in shock, "That's the direction of the hospital. The building has collapsed." They were only a few kilometers from the city hospital, so they could vaguely see the shocking collapse of the more than 10-story outpatient department. "Luo Je, how is this possible? The city hospital building was built just a year ago, and the hospital had just moved from the old one. Even shoddy construction wouldn't have collapsed so quickly, right? And hospitals are supposed to have strong structural systems." A tall, muscular young man in a black vest and camouflage pants exclaimed in astonishment. His companions, who had also assumed the hospital building had collapsed, began to doubt the unbelievable collapse of the new hospital building, completed only a year ago. After hearing his well-reasoned analysis, Luo Je nodded, agreeing with the young man's opinion, but also offered his own assessment. "It's probably not a natural collapse, but man-made. No, more likely a monster." "I'm afraid it is," the man who spoke first said, pulling out a pair of binoculars. He took in the clear view of the hospital through them, his voice bitter. "Let me see. Hurry up, let me see too. Stop fighting, come one by one, don't fucking fight." After a flurry of scrambling, everyone's face was grim. It really collapsed, and the monster that just retreated did indeed go to the hospital, someone said with a sudden realization. With a horrific monster that can bring down even a 10 or 20-story building, is there any hope for humanity? Someone else expressed despair. Luo Je was the last to take the telescope. After observing for a while, he took a deep breath, and, as if resolved, spoke in a deep voice. "Casey, cockroach, Jija, fatty, dahi, do you dare to come with me?" The man with the telescope was the first to respond. "Luo Je, you saved my life. If you have anything to say, just tell me. I'll go through fire and water with you, through thick and thin. And me. Count me in." The 5 men whose names were called responded in unison, none hesitating. Beiyang, take the remaining brothers and defend the house. Stay alert and do your best to protect your vulnerable companions. Also, take care of your sister-in-law until we return." With these final words, the leader, known as Liu Ming, drew his weapon, a dark red axe with a long handle that gleamed with a subtle edge, and led the way out of the villa's gate, which was blocked by cabinets, tables, and chairs. Their destination was the direction of the recently collapsed hospital building. His wife, with whom he had been through thick and thin for nearly 10 years, was now dying, her wounds severely inflamed and festering. The sleeping pills and painkillers in the villa had all run out. His wife was in excruciating pain every night, unable to sleep. She gritted her teeth to keep quiet, her lips nearly shattered from biting him. Watching this was heartbreaking, yet he felt helpless and helpless. If he couldn't find a quick-acting medication, he feared he would have to watch his wife die before his eyes, a fact he couldn't accept. He had awakened immense superpowers in the apocalypse, allowing him to survive better than ordinary people, but he couldn't even protect his wife, a fact he blamed himself for. He had to fight, no matter what. The commotion caused by the collapse of the hospital building would surely attract countless monster survivors, presenting his best chance. Chapter 184, Cultivation Ability, Star Moon Magic Gold. Arriving at a street around the corner from the hospital, a man named Casey hunched over, removed his binoculars, and gently raised his military shovel. "Brother Luo, shall we search the ruins of the outpatient building for medicine?" Luo reached out to gather his breath, his nostrils quivering as he detected the strong scent of blood. He said solemnly, "No, let's go to the inpatient department. The stench of blood is too strong in these ruins. Many monsters and humans must have died there. We'll definitely attract a large number of monsters." With that, he led the way into the hospital, heading towards the inpatient building next to the outpatient building, where fewer monsters were present. The group of 6 advanced cautiously in the shadowed, secluded area, but no matter how careful they were, they couldn't withstand the monsters everywhere. Roar. A swift mutant spotted its prey and pounced first. The leader dropped his knees slightly, gripping the dark red axe with both hands. With a fierce swing, the axe formed a full moon, a flash of blood on the blade. Bang! The swift mutant's tough cuticle was instantly severed, and the axe swung its head off. Its corpse fell limply to the ground, twitching, and a moment later, it was still. The boss's powers have grown stronger. The crowd behind the man exclaimed in surprise. The stronger their leader, Liu Ming, became, the greater their safety margin would be. Liu Ming simply smiled and said nothing. His awakened superpowers had indeed grown stronger, but not yet strong enough to allow him to chat and laugh freely in a place rife with danger, where every step could lead to a bottomless abyss. The group advanced cautiously until they finally reached the inpatient ward's main entrance. Just as they were about to enter the building, a massive dark figure emerged from the ground. "Zhenrong, where have you been?" A man's voice suddenly boomed amid the stunned expressions of the group. Even Liu Ming, the voice's maker, was speechless. He gazed around the hall, still decorated in the usual hospital style, and was speechless. The moment the building collapsed, he had ordered Zhenrong to evacuate before he was buried. Unexpectedly, Zhenrong finally emerged from the hospital, albeit in a different building. "Who are you? Who are you?" Liu Ming and the others searching for medicine exclaimed in surprise. "We are here to search for supplies," the leading man, sensing the apparent formidable presence of the man emerging from the ground, answered in the silence between the two. "Searching for supplies at the hospital?" Liu Ming's voice was filled with confusion. What supplies did the hospital hold? They were likely just medicine and medical equipment. The leading man quickly explained that they were looking for medicine to save lives, and Liu Ming nodded, half believing. Roar, roar, ah. The monsters near the inpatient ward, attracted by the noise Zhenrong had just made, roared and lunged. Liu Ming waved, signaling Zhenrong to charge directly at the monsters and break through. As for this group of random survivors, they weren't even related, so why would they care? Crack, crack. The first to attack were 2 swift mutants, but they were both instantly crushed to pulp by the dragon salamander's massive claws. As more and more monsters poured into the inpatient hall, the faces of the few survivors grew increasingly grim. Among their group, only Liu Ming could handle those mutants. The others had to fight a few ordinary cannibal corpses alone, relying on weapons that were vastly different from those of ordinary people. "Sir, could you take us with you?" Luo pleaded humbly. With the monsters already attacking, the search for medicine had been for naught. It was a blessing to escape alive without a single casualty. As for the medicine, it might be found in those pharmacies. It was just a matter of traveling a little further, searching farther afield. As long as they were still alive, anything was possible. To their surprise, the mysterious man before them, upon hearing their request, not only did he not even consider taking them with him, but instead, he let the beast charge out even faster, as if trying to get away from them as quickly as possible. Rang knocked down another swarm of monsters, and more surged forward. Unable to withstand the massive beast, the monsters shifted their attacks to Luo and his companions. After slashing several monsters and about to be trapped by the swarm, Luo made a decisive move and shouted, "Go upstairs." Ding. Just as Luo and the 5 of them were heading for the second floor, a crisp sound echoed through the hall, shrouded in the clashing of blood and fighting, as if something metal had fallen to the tiled floor. Rang, get back. Liu Ming suddenly commanded. Rang's eyes were filled with confusion, but he obeyed and returned the way he had come. Like a bulldozer, he knocked the monsters to the ground, quickly returning to his original position. Liu Ming leaped off Rang's back and picked up the fallen metal. Star Moon Demon Gold. Liu Ming's voice was filled with excitement. The next breath, Liu Ming, like a ghost, approached several survivors rushing to the second floor and asked calmly, "Who dropped this?" "It's mine, sir," Luo said. Liu Ming asked again, "Where did you get it?" The leading man, seeing the immense beast holding off the tidal wave of monsters, knew his life was safe for the time being. He breathed a sigh of relief. Although he was puzzled as to why this man, who could control terrifying monsters, would be interested in this mysterious metal he had stumbled upon, he quickly replied, "Sir, if you can lead us out alive, I swear to tell you everything I know." Luo didn't address Liu Ming directly, but instead made a request. "Okay. Rang, lead the way. You all follow closely." Liu Ming nodded and agreed to this modest request. Compared to the clues they had regarding the Star Moon Demon Gold, saving their lives was insignificant. Of course, if their clues proved worthless after they escaped, don't blame him for turning against them. He might even do something like sending the 6 of them back. The purple metal in his hand, barely half the size of a fist, was the currency of the future world Liu Ming had been so eager to find clues about in the East Safe Zone. It was called the Star Moon Coin, crafted from the unique metal within the magic gold, leveraging its immense malleability. Using a standard mold, a small fingernail-sized piece of Star Moon magic gold could be broken into several thin sheets of gold paper, each the size of a banknote. These sheets weighed no more than ordinary paper. Magic gold also served as a reservoir for demonic energy, making it a strategic resource among monsters. However, its characteristic was that once stretched, the demonic energy it contained rapidly dissipated, negating its strategic purpose. Humans could not use magic gold, but the safe zone's use of it as currency ensured smooth trade, while also depleting this strategic resource, a resource reserved for monsters. The currency made from magic gold was named the Star Moon Magic Gold Coin, or Star Moon Coin. The 5 colors of magic gold: light purple, purple, dark purple, and purplish black represent denominations ranging from 1 to 10,000. In the early days of the apocalypse, even the smallest denomination, a Star Moon coin, could be exchanged for 1 kilogram of fine grains, or 2 to 3 kilograms of coarse grains. Using this metal as hard currency virtually eliminated counterfeiting. While manufacturing Star Moon coins was simple, obtaining the raw materials was far more challenging, requiring the forcing of demons. Even if forcible seizures were possible, the maximum they could obtain was the low-grade magic gold with a light purple denomination of 1. Higher-grade magic gold was often garrisoned by extremely powerful monsters. Even the military and government wouldn't risk seizing a large amount of metal that had little practical use beyond currency. Using Star Moon magic gold as currency is the future trend. One of my reasons for visiting the Eastern Safe Zone was to determine whether the higher-ups had already decided to promote this currency. However, I discovered that they didn't even seem to know what magic gold was. This hard currency wouldn't be widely adopted for the time being, suggesting a foresighted me would seize the opportunity to strike it rich. I've heard from veterans who've been in the eastern safe zone since its establishment that once magic gold's use is established, the military and government will punish anyone hoarding it. Deductions of rations and increased labor are common, while those who voluntarily surrender magic gold will receive material rewards. Therefore, once magic gold's true use is discovered, my plans to collect it will be thwarted. It's absolutely necessary to seize this opportunity to hoard a large amount of Star Moon magic gold before the Eastern Safe Zone officially designates it as hard currency and begins plundering it from civilians and monster gathering places. Here's a second update. Liu Ming is just a supporting role in the readership's Dive Bomber. Chapter 185 Monster's Nest, Fusion, and Overlap. Outside the hospital, Liu Ming looked at the 6 terrified men, waved the Star Moon magic gold in his hand, and spoke bluntly, "Where did you get it from? Tell me." Liu Ming's question finally brought the men back to their senses after their near-death escape. Having just fought their way out of the hospital, they had repeatedly encountered terrifying monsters capable of ripping them apart countless times, each time reduced to pulp by a single claw from a behemoth. This terrifying experience made them even more respectful towards Liu Ming, fearing to offend the mysterious man who could control the beasts. Having narrowly escaped death, Liu Ming, without hesitation, gratefully relayed the clue Liu Ming sought a few days ago. While searching for supplies in Pinky Valley with a few companions, I stumbled upon a massive beehive-like hive of monsters surrounded by them. I stumbled upon this. Surrounded by monsters? A massive beehive? What color is that beehive? Liu Ming had a vague idea of what the man had encountered, having encountered one himself not long ago. But to confirm his suspicions, he asked again. Liu Ming replied without hesitation, "Purple." It was undoubtedly Hell's Lair. This was the demonic tool of war he had encountered at the beginning of the apocalypse, a behemoth used to transport monster troops and supplies across time and space. Unexpectedly, even Star Moon Demon Gold was being transported there. Pinky Valley? Liu Ming, despite boasting of being a walking map of Wuling, was taken aback by the name. He had never heard of the place before, and had no idea where to begin. Hearing the doubt in Liu Ming's tone, Liu Ming gritted his teeth and said, "Master, I can take you to Pinky Valley to find this metal, but I hope you'll agree to one condition. Don't go." Liu Ming. Liu Ming, have you forgotten how Dahi's brother died? In that hellish place, torn to pieces by that terrifying 2-story tall monster, and stuffed into its mouth. It was horrific. Do you want to repeat the same mistake? Upon hearing that Liu Ming had agreed to return to that haunted place with the mysterious man before him, his companions' faces suddenly changed, and they all tried to dissuade him. Liu Ming waved his hand, signaling them to stop trying, and said firmly, "I've made up my mind." "What are the conditions?" Liu Ming's eyes flashed with curiosity and confusion. If that place was so terrifying for these people, why would he offer to take him there? Liu Ming immediately stated his conditions. "I need antibiotics and anti-inflammatory drugs to save a seriously injured and dying man. I can promise you that, but I can't guarantee your safety if you encounter danger once we get there." Liu Ming nodded and agreed to his request. A few common medicines wouldn't require any special effort to search for. He'd already found a large amount in the magical photos from his numerous forages. As for the man's life, it wouldn't matter much, as long as he could make it to his destination alive. And then, a moment later, Liu Ming suddenly felt the urge to protect the man's life. "Master, don't worry about me. If it were just an ordinary monster, I can protect myself." With that, the man's sturdy arms swung the long-handled axe in his hand a few times. The axe sliced through the air, creating a whistling sound. The blade gleamed with a cold light, and still uncoagulated monster blood dripped along the edge onto the ground. Liu Ming immediately recognized the dark red axe as the ordinary firefighter's axe he'd used before. However, it had undergone a special modification, making its sharpness comparable to that of an ordinary divine weapon, and possessing at least 2 weapon attributes. It's got the sharpness attribute superimposed 4 times, and the strength attribute superimposed at least 3 times. Although the boost from each superimposition isn't significant, the combined attributes are comparable to those of an F-rank divine weapon. Liu Ming's perceptive abilities revealed the axe's various attributes clearly. "Where did you get this battle axe?" Liu Ming asked. This weapon attribute superimposition was clearly the work of a weapon support professional or someone with special abilities. He had no interest in the weapon itself, but was deeply interested in the person who created it. Liu wasn't worried about the man before him coveting his weapon. After all, the mysterious man's gear was clearly exceptional. If he were to try to rob him out of his wealth, he'd be in for a surprise. "This is an ordinary fire axe I modified myself." As if worried Liu Ming wouldn't believe him, he pointed to the weapons in the hands of his 5 companions and said, "I've modified all of their weapons, too." Liu Ming looked around and saw that the weapons of the 5 men were indeed enhanced with sharpness or strength, some with just 1, others with 2. However, these weapons, with only 1 or 2 minor additions, were only slightly stronger than ordinary sharp weapons, and the effect was insignificant, so he hadn't noticed until now. Amidst the 6 men's bewilderment, Liu Ming suddenly laughed. "Very good. I'll keep you alive this time." Using his perceptive powers to observe the man his companions called Liu Ming realized that he wasn't just a support professional specializing in weapon modification, but a nature awakener who had awakened the special ability of fusion and attachment. Fusion and overlay dissolve all things into their essence, then fuse them into objects, imbuing them with special properties. These properties can be stacked, allowing even ordinary properties to produce advanced ones. Few awakened this unique and mysterious ability, but all possess the potential to become weapon masters. I found a future weapon master. As the apocalypse progresses, monsters impervious to ordinary cold weapons, and even small caliber firearms, will become increasingly numerous. Anyone seeking supplies outside the shelter will be unable to defeat these monsters with their current weapons, such as spears, short sticks, swords, and knives. Only stronger weapons can defeat stronger monsters. The importance of a weapon master to a shelter is self-evident. While I currently possess a large number of divinely blessed weapons, I haven't yet equipped every ordinary combatant with one. He would definitely bring this awakened one, who had fused the overlays, back to the vault. If he refused to go with him, he would be forcibly taken back and imprisoned as a vault's exclusive weaponsmith. Although this weaponsmith would likely only be considered an apprentice weaponsmith for a few years, after all, he had only mastered the overlays of 2 attributes. Sharpness. A full weaponsmith must master the overlays of 10 or more different attributes, and each overlay must increase the stats of ordinary cold weapons by at least 10%. In other words, if a full weaponsmith overlaid the sharpness attribute 4 times on the ordinary battle axe before him, he would at least increase its sharpness by 40%. This man, however, had only increased the sharpness of the axe blade by around 25%, but even that was a commendable achievement. "You go back first. Be careful on the road. I'm taking this gentleman to that place. If possible, I will bring back the relics of Dahi's brother." Perhaps knowing why the man in front of him suddenly changed from being indifferent to his own life to promising to keep him safe, Liu instructed his 5 companions with a relaxed look. Seeing that they were still hesitating, looking worried and unwilling to leave, Liu urged them in a deep voice, "What are you still hesitating about? Didn't you hear the master say that he would save my life? It's okay if you don't trust my strength, but you don't trust the master? Brother Liu, please be careful. Master, our brother Liu's life is in your hands. Brother Liu, you must come back alive. Even if it's not for us brothers, what will happen if your sister-in-law dies?" Hearing this, the 5 people knew that brother Liu had made up his mind, so they could only turn around and leave after giving some instructions. Chapter 186, Obtaining the Magic Gold, Saving People and Showing Mercy, Part 1. To save time, Liu Ming lifted the roughly 100-pound middle-aged man, whom he had designated as the shelter's weapons maker, and unfurled his flame dragon wings, flying in the direction he pointed. Although Liu's eyes were nearly blinded by the gusts of wind in midair, he still managed to break the silence between them. "Master, what's your name?" "My surname is Liu, and my given name is Changyun." Liu Ming said, and stopped talking. The man, calling himself Liu Changyun, continued to introduce himself. From his narration, Liu Ming learned his origins. In peacetime, he practiced a profession considered ancient in the 21st century, a cold weapon forger. He was also the owner of a chain of weapon experience stores. Years of forging cold weapons had honed his strength and physique, the foundations of his survival. During the catastrophe, while locked in a life or death struggle with a terrifying monster, whose hide was so tough that even the razor-sharp hand sword couldn't penetrate it, he unexpectedly awakened a miraculous superpower. Imbued with the powerful sharpness of his hand sword, he slashed the monster's head with a single blow, saving his life. However, the hand sword that had saved his life was lost during the subsequent battles. He, his wife, and the remaining survivors eventually found refuge in a sparsely populated, relatively safe villa complex, where they met Liu Ming. He sighed as he spoke of the hand sword and his shop filled with finely crafted cold weapons. It was unbelievable that the owner of a cold weapon experience shop would now rely on a fire axe. Nearly half an hour later, Liu Ming, following Luo's directions, arrived at his final destination, Pingqiu Lane. Arriving there, Liu Ming finally understood why he hadn't recalled the alley. Later generations called it Sipinkeng, not Pingqiu Lane. The origins of the Sipinkeng lie in the presence of a Hell's Nest, one of the top 3 most dangerous in the entire Wuling region. The location where this Hell's Nest was teleported from Hell is somewhat bizarre. It burst through the ground, creating a deep square crater. This pit, a gathering place for hellish demons, became known as the Sipinkeng. However, Pingqiu Lane, as it stands today, is not yet rife with the demonic flames that would later give it its name. Entering the narrow alley, a Hell's Nest, as tall as the 4 or 5-story houses, sits on a vast expanse of flat ground at the bottom. Groups of lesser demons, led by greater lesser demons, patrol the area like guards, wielding steel pitchforks. Even higher level demons, such as chain demons, hellfall demons, scythe demons, and bone demons, loom large, creating an incredibly strong defense. How the weapon in my hand managed to slip through such formidable defenses and obtain the Star Moon Demon Gold. As if sensing Liu Ming's confusion, Luo Changyuan quickly explained, "Master, there weren't so many monsters when I first arrived, otherwise we wouldn't have found ourselves in such danger. I don't know why there are so many monsters." Liu Ming nodded, indicating his acceptance. Sensing Ji Zhenirang approaching with Sumi, Liu Ming flapped his wings and charged towards the alley, where danger lurked. Seeing Liu Ming swooping down without a word towards that nightmarish place, Luo Changyuan's face paled with fear. Master, and, for safety's sake, why don't we wait for that giant beast?" Liu Ming ignored him, accelerating past the charging demons and heading towards the lair at the bottom of the alley. As he approached the Hell's Lair, Liu Ming had reached the end. The dozens of demons that hadn't caught up to him had already flapped their flesh wings, surrounding him in a vast dark mass. As the horde of fallen demons charged, Luo Changyuan's face was already filled with despair when a shadowy black figure descended from the sky, sweeping them away like a stream of dumplings. Crackling. Thud, thud, thud. The fallen demons were swept away, tumbling to the ground one by one like a stream of dumplings, struggling in agony, unable to rise for a moment. This showed that the Shadow's sweeping attack wasn't just a simple blow, it was powerful enough to overwhelm even these supposedly invulnerable monsters, known for their strength to withstand cold weapons. "Master, this is your pet too?" Luo Changyuan's mouth gaped wide enough to fit an apple, seemingly in disbelief that humans could control such a mysterious dragon-like being. "Where is the demon gold?" Liu Ming shouted as he charged towards the Hell's Lair. Responding, Luo Changyuan quickly replied, "It's down there, in a pile behind that purple monster's nest." Whoosh. As the winged claw dragon snake soared through the air, Liu Ming shot towards the Hell's Nest like a lightning bolt. "Luo Changyuan, everything you see next will rot in your stomach, otherwise." Standing before a pile of Star Moon magic gold packed in purple rattan boxes, Liu Ming unsheathed his magical camera and glared coldly at the creatures before him, who weren't even considered his own. "Half a holy fire demon puppet, hold them back." As soon as he finished speaking, the 2 ferocious creatures firmly blocked the monsters charging towards Liu Ming. Snap, snap. Seeing Liu Changyuan frightened by his intimidation, Liu Ming quickly grabbed his camera and captured dozens of boxes of Star Moon magic gold in his magical photos. Retreat. In less than 10 seconds, all the magic gold in sight had been looted. Liu Ming immediately leaped onto the back of the winged claw dragon snake and took off. Roar. Just as he was about to finish his business, the walls of the massive hell's nest began to rip apart, and figures with an extremely terrifying aura emerged, ready to tear apart Liu Ming, the one who disturbed them. Before Liu Ming and Arfeli could even take off, countless demons from every corner of the alley, from the rooftops and houses, sprang upon the news, and descended upon the intruder, chasing him from the sky and the ground. Meow. Roar. In the critical moment, Sumi and Giseli Rang arrived like a giant chariot and a supreme assassin, diverting much of the firepower for Liu Ming, allowing him to escape. In a commercial building several kilometers from Pinkyu Alley, Liu Ming, with a look of satisfaction, fiddled with a piece of magic gold that glowed with a cold purple light. He suddenly tossed the magic gold into the air, unsheathed his sword, and with nearly 10 swipes, he sliced the half fist-sized piece into dozens of roughly equal pieces. With a wave of his flame dragon cloak, Liu Ming gathered all the pieces of magic gold in his arms. He picked up a piece at random, and, exerting force with both hands, instantly stretched the small piece of magic gold into a thin sheet of gold paper like dough. Liu Ming held the gold paper up to the sun. The sunlight faintly filtered through the paper, revealing a mysterious pattern of stars, sun, and moon. This is how the Star Moon coin got its name. The Star Moon coin gets its name from the Star Moon pattern that appears when stretched. This is a unique pattern formed by widening the layered patterns of the magic gold itself. Different grades of magic gold vary not only in color and lightness, but also in pattern, making them easy to identify. 0.5 grams of magic gold can be shaped and stretched into a Star Moon magic gold coin with a face value of 1. The lowest grade of magic gold, the light purple one, weighed no less than 9 tons, or 9,000 kilograms, or 9 million grams. Converted into Star Moon coins, this translates to 18 million coins with a face value. Liu Ming now only had to wait for the Star Moon coin to become widely available. He would surely become the richest man in Wuling immediately. Chapter 187, Obtaining the Magic Gold, Saving People and Showing Grace, Part 2. Liu Ming, already content with 9 tons of light purple magic gold and a few other grades, pocketed a Star Moon magic gold coin he had just stretched out barehanded. He spread his wings again, carried Liu Changyuan out of the building's French window, and soared off into the distance. Mid-air, amidst the gusting wind, Liu Ming asked, "Where is your refuge?" Refuge? The man before him clearly didn't understand the concept, but he quickly realized his question was unnecessary. Liu Ming's point was simply to take him back. He anxiously asked, "Master, should we search for some medicine first? Just take me there. I have plenty of medicine." Liu Changyuan was overjoyed. He didn't believe this terrifyingly powerful man would deceive him. He quickly pointed the way. "Master, fly that way." 10 minutes later, a whistling sound echoed from the flat ground in front of a beige duplex villa. A fiery red figure descended from the sky, its wings flapping as it whipped up swirling currents like a whirlwind. In front of the villa lay a pool of blood red, sticky, and foul-smelling sewage. Dark red objects loomed within, along with piles of milky white maggots. 3 cannibal corpses lay crouched before the sewage, devouring the maggots swarming on the dark red hard objects. Clearly, these monsters, starved for food, had devoured these disgusting creatures as a rare delicacy. However, Liu Ming's sudden arrival had clearly interrupted their meal. The 3 monsters, chewing the milky white food in their rotting, fetid mouths, charged towards Liu Ming and his companions with the agility of hounds, speed far exceeding that of ordinary humans. Even if these monsters hadn't evolved into mutants, they were likely close. With a swish, Liu Changyuan swung his fire axe, the blade flashing with a cold light, and his strength instantly increased. With one blow, he sent a cannibal corpse flying head first, sending it flying. The other 2 monsters attacked him from both sides. Liu Changyuan yanked his axe from the cannibal's head and held it across his body, blocking the forehand sprouting long, sharp claws. He ducked and leaned back, preventing the 2 cannibals from striking him due to inertia. causing them to fall directly behind Liu Changyun. He spun around and slashed through the necks of the two monsters with two sharp, slashing blows. With a snap, the cannibal's cervical vertebrae snapped, and the two monsters, still opening and closing their jaws, fell to the ground. After Liu Changyun dispatched 3 cannibals, each nearly F grade, with a swift, direct destruction, he visibly struggled. After catching his breath, he turned to Liu Ming and said, "Master, excuse me." Liu Ming nodded approvingly. This guy's awakened abilities had nothing to do with combat. He could only display this level of power thanks to a 20% boost in strength from the axe he possessed, a truly impressive skill. Liu Changyun's high-top hiking boots clattered as he stepped over the sewage and reached the villa's door. He turned apologetically and explained to Liu Ming, "We've fought off several attacks from small groups of monsters here. These are puddles left by blood in the heavy rain from the past few days. To enter the villa, one had to first walk through the pool of foul-smelling sewage." With a single leap, Liu Ming leaped across the 5 or 6 meter wide puddle and landed directly in front of Liu Changyun. With a creak, less than 10 seconds after the two arrived, the villa's door suddenly flew open. Several people Liu Ming had met before, along with some unfamiliar faces, poured out, each one excitedly gazing at Liu Changyun's safe return. Liu Changyun waved them inside first. After gesturing for Liu Ming to enter first, he left the man named Casey with his men to dispose of the 3 monster corpses at the door, lest the smell of blood attract other monsters. Their method was simple. They added some accelerants and cremated the bodies on the spot. They then crushed the charred corpses, now devoid of any trace of blood, and buried them. Cannibal corpses are highly sensitive to the scent of blood, so this effectively blocked their perception. After Casey and 2 companions buried the 3 monster corpses, they locked the villa's door and blocked it with other debris before heading inside. Meanwhile, Liu Ming had already followed Liu Changyun and a large group to a sunny room on the 2nd floor. Along the way, Liu Ming observed the small shelter, a temporary retreat constructed by cutting through the middle wall of a duplex villa. There were approximately 50 or 60 survivors inside, half young and middle-aged, and half the elderly, women, and children. This ratio, combined with the combat effectiveness of the young and middle-aged, made Liu Ming conclude that the shelter's leader was a softie. Among them was only Liu Changyun, a support-type awakened being. The rest were ordinary people, their weapons at best slightly more powerful than those of ordinary men, yet they dared to take in half the number of incompetents. In the apocalypse, many small shelters like this one, with their limited space and extremely limited population, typically maintain strict controls on who they accept. They rarely accept those without combat capabilities or significant contributions to the shelter, unless they are relatives of key members. Liu Ming only remembered encountering one such shelter at the beginning of the apocalypse. Guangaiu Shelter, a place he cherished forever. Once I'm done with this, I'll go to Guangaiu, Liu Ming decided. Entering a room emitting a faint stench of decay, Liu Changyun pointed to a haggard woman lying on a bed and said with a heavy voice, "Master, this is the injured person I need to treat, and also my wife." Liu Ming lifted the covers, glanced at the wound on the woman's abdomen, and asked with a quizzical expression, "Do you want anti-inflammatory medication and antibiotics?" "Yes, master," Liu Changyun replied decisively. Liu Ming pulled out several boxes of medicine and syringes from his pockets and said, "Then I'll give it to you. But let me be frank. While what I give you is genuine effective medicine, your wife's injury isn't just a simple inflammation. Antibiotics and effective medicine alone are a drop in the bucket for this kind of injury. They won't be much use. Don't blame me if you can't save her. Then I'll give it a try." Liu Changyun gritted his teeth and took the injection. He glanced at the packaging and saw that it was indeed the effective anti-inflammatory and antibiotic medicine Liu Ming had described. He drew the medicine from the glass tube into the syringe and slowly injected it into his wife's vein. To his despair, a full hour or 2 passed, and his wife's inflammation showed no signs of subsiding. Instead, her temperature had risen significantly, and she had developed a fever. "Master, you've seen the cause of this injury. There must be a cure, right?" Liu Changyun, looking at his wife's pained face, placed his final hope on Liu Ming. Liu Ming replied with a smile, "Of course I can save her, but why should I? I've already given you the medicine you requested. We're even now. But to Luo Changyun, that smile was like a devilish smile, sending a chill down his spine. What if this mysterious master refused to save his wife? Master, if you can show me mercy and save her, I, Luo Changyun, will repay you with all my might. Something Liu Ming hadn't expected happened. Luo Changyun, a burly man standing 5 feet 8 inches, bent his knees and knelt before Liu Ming, looking up at him pleadingly. His companions either glared at Liu Ming or offered similarly pleading looks. Liu Ming ignored the stares, his eyes focused solely on Luo Changyun. Seeing him declare his stance, Liu Ming immediately spoke, "Work like a slave? Are you sure? If even one word Luo Changyun, say today is false, I will be torn and devoured by countless monsters." Upon hearing this, Luo Changyun swore a solemn oath without a burial place. Liu Ming slowly said, "Very well. If you can't do it, you don't have to be devoured by monsters. Just escape from my pets. Everyone, get out. I need to save her." Actually, to save this dying woman, all he had to do was summon Kamenwun, scatter a serene light and a natural laurel wreath over her, and then apply some blood potion. In a matter of moments, she would be able to walk, though slightly weakened. But Liu Ming had gone to such great lengths to abduct this future weapons master, and since he'd gone to such lengths to save her, he had to put on a full show. How could he let these people know that his rescue was so simple? Of course, it would be better to pretend that the price he paid to save others was as high as possible, which would also make Luo Changyun feel more grateful. Chapter 188, The Uncertain Future, Guangdao Building. When Kamenwun appeared in the room, an emerald light shone from between his slender fingers. Within a minute, the black, festering wound on the woman's abdomen had turned red. After Liu Ming applied another layer of blood solution, the wound was nearly healed. The unconscious woman's eyes fluttered slightly, as if she were occasionally awake. A few minutes later, when the woman finally opened her closed eyes and looked at the stranger in the room with a puzzled expression, Liu Ming pushed open the door and walked out. Looking at the anxious crowd outside, Liu Ming spoke in a deep voice, "Your wife must have been injured by the sharp claws of a hellish rot demon, laced with decaying toxins. The poison has penetrated deep into her bones. Saving her life is a great sacrifice. I hope you will keep your promise." Everyone was stunned. Less than 5 minutes, and she was already healed. Even the reincarnations of Bianc and Huatuo wouldn't be able to save people so quickly. Seeing Luo Changyun rushing in impatiently, everyone followed him in with a mixture of doubt. A moment later, when everyone reappeared before Liu Ming, no one looked at him with suspicion anymore. Instead, they all radiated enthusiasm, as if they were the reincarnation of a miraculous medical god. "Come with me," Liu Ming said slowly, looking at Luo Changyun, who had finally saved his wife and was still immersed in immense joy. "Go?" Luo Changyun looked puzzled. Liu Ming bluntly stated his desire, "Come back to my shelter. I need your skills." Luo Changyun nodded decisively, then said something that surprised Liu Ming. "Master, I can go with you, but what about these survivors who followed me to survive?" He hadn't expected this man to agree to leave with him so directly. A slight shock crossed his face before he replied, "They can come with us, too." The train station square was no small shelter. It could easily accommodate at least 3,000 people. He added, "If they are willing to leave with us." Luo Changyun nodded and pleaded, "Master, please let me persuade them. When should we leave?" "The sooner the better, this afternoon at the latest." Liu Ming's tone left no room for negotiation. "Okay." Finally, all 63 people boarded the transfer vehicles and left the duplex villa. A long-distance bus and a heavy truck, carrying over 60 people, headed off into the distance. Liu Ming, Luo Changyun, and 2 strong young men led the way in of. "Master, where are we going?" Luo Changyun, from the driver's seat of the lead SUV, asked Liu Ming in the passenger seat as they exited the villa complex. "Guangdao Building," Liu Ming uttered softly. "That's north of the city. Even with good roads, it'll take over an hour to get there," Luo Changyun said, perplexed. As he finished his questioning, he noticed Liu Ming had closed his eyes, resting, and ignored him. He could only continue to chatter, but he still drove ahead towards the north. Liu Ming knew Guangyu building was far away, but he had reasons to go. The journey was smooth, as Jizeli Rang had already cleared the stranded vehicles, which were dangerous and obstructing the road, out of sight of the convoy. Over an hour later, on a road near Guangyu building, the convoy whizzed past a group of people who had just sneaked out of the mall. Stop. Liu Ming, who had been meditating on the four-element Brahma treasures of earth, fire, wind, and water, suddenly opened his eyes and shouted as the ragged survivors looked on in alarm. As the convoy abruptly stopped, several familiar faces caught Liu Ming's eye among the people lining the road. Xu Chengbing, Luo Zhaohuzi, Luo Huzi, Fei Qinglan. Liu Ming opened the door, jumped out of the SUV, and slowly walked towards the group of survivors who were staring at him in surprise. As he looked at Luo Huzi, an awakened water element possessing healing water abilities and mastering the power of healing water patterns, Sister Huzi nearly blurted out a name. Countless memories of the small shelter where she had lived for nearly half a year flooded back. A week after the disaster, her stored food and water were exhausted. After another day of starvation, she finally decided to forage. It was on that day that she stabbed her first cannibal corpse with a fruit knife and finally found a small bag of biscuits. She survived for another 3 days relying on that bag of biscuits and half a bottle of water collected from a puddle. Later, when she had no choice but to forage again, this time with greater success, she found a large bag of food in the basket of a bicycle that had fallen by the roadside. On her way back, she was encountered by a group of survivors also searching for food. 3 days of starvation left her defenseless as a group of survivors, armed with steel pipes, kitchen knives, and other weapons, seized her supplies. Although outmatched physically, I, with my temper, launched into a barrage of abuse, earning myself another beating. Starving, thirsty, and wounded, I lay dazed by the roadside, plagued by dangerous monsters. I thought I was doomed. But before I was slain by the monsters, my final digestion, I encountered Huzi and Chengbing, who had led a foraging expedition. These two, still retaining their kindness in the apocalypse, rescued me from my death, and I became a member of this small refuge. Because the refuge was overcrowded with the elderly, the weak, women, and children, everyone missed the crucial 3 days needed to evacuate to a safer location. However, with Xu Chengbing, who had naturally awakened the power of Qi, and Luo Huzi, an awakened person with water abilities, in charge, and with the refuge, located in a sparsely populated suburban underground warehouse, there were few monsters nearby, so safety was assured for the time being. Until that damned professional accidentally attracted a horde of monsters while fleeing. Li Mao, driven by greed for the professional's relics, opened the death gate. Thinking of this, a flicker of murderous intent flashed in Liu Ming's eyes. Luo Huzi, a teacher at a childcare training center, was holding a parent-child outing in the suburbs on the day of the disaster. She brought along her younger sister, a freshman majoring in preschool education at Wuling University. Luo Zhaohuzi came to help, while Xu Chengbing was a young driver at the childcare training center. Because the disaster fell on a weekday, many children were traveling with their grandparents. This made the survival of this group of survivors, mostly elderly, weak, women, and children, uncertain in the apocalypse. Fortunately, on their way back from the outing, everyone who had encountered the disaster, led by Huzi and Chengbing, escaped to the underground warehouse. Fei Qinglan was the head of the security team guarding this warehouse, which was filled with valuable specialized metals. As guards of this warehouse, they were well equipped and skilled. Chapter 189, Small Shelter, Blood-Sucking Flies. Luo Huzi hid the supplies she had painstakingly gathered from the mall in her arms, fearing to attract the greedy gazes of the newcomers. In the apocalypse, few people like being watched, and even less so, trouble, which often means death. Luo Huzi, whose stature could be described as petite, gazed warily at the strange man, who had suddenly appeared before her and asked, "Who are you?" The reason he was strange was that his eyes, sunken inwards above his high nose bridge and sharp as an eagle's, occasionally gleamed with a variety of peculiar glints. There was memory, nostalgia, attachment, sadness, and regret, but no malice or hostility. Although there was no overt hostility, the difficult days of survival had honed Liu, a woman regarded by hundreds as a leader, protector, and support, with an instinct for vigilance. As Liu asked, Liu Ming laughed, a hearty laugh, a resounding one that stunned and bewildered the others who had followed him out of the car. They had seen Liu Ming, the terrifying man who had suddenly appeared and could control giant beasts, smile before. I'm glad you're okay. Liu Ming didn't directly answer Liu's question, but simply said something incoherent. This statement left everyone who heard it puzzled and bewildered, as if they didn't know what the man was doing in sign language. Liu Ming tried hard to suppress his inner excitement. If he really counted the people before him, they were his last group of friends in that dark and gloomy apocalyptic world. However, Liu Ming also noticed their wariness and caution towards him, which was a minimum requirement for any qualified apocalyptic survivor. Who are you? Why are you stopping us? An old friend. Coming to help you, Liu Ming replied succinctly. As for the extent of the other person's belief, only the person involved could know. Hearing this, Liu's confusion deepened. She had no memory of the old friend before her. Old friend? Whose old friend are you? Suddenly, as if remembering something, Liu realized that perhaps the old friend the man was referring to wasn't her. She turned to her companions and asked, does anyone know him? To her dismay, they all shook their heads, indicating that none of them possessed the man Liu Ming was referring to. Get out of the way. Even though we just explored that mall, it's cleaner than a dog's gnaw. There aren't many supplies. Liu Ming's mouth twitched at this, as if he hadn't expected his sudden appearance to lead him to such an awkward situation. Does Fei Chenglin's injury still need treatment? Liu Ming asked bluntly. His goal too was to get these people back to their own shelter. How did you know team leader Fei was injured? Liu and her companions stared in disbelief. Fei Chenglin was the team leader of the guards on duty at their shelter, a retired veteran working for a security company. They viewed this rather grumpy veteran as the ultimate guarantor of their safety, aside from Huzi and Shu Chengbing. I also know his injury was in his calf, and it's now spread to his thigh. If he doesn't heal, there's no need for treatment. He'll definitely die, Liu Ming said decisively. Can you really save him? This was Shu Chengbing's voice, a handsome young man. Hearing that his severely injured and incapacitated companion might still be able to recover, he excitedly asked. Lead the way. They stopped in front of a building of 10 or 20 stories, with Liu Ming in the south leading the way. He knew that downstairs in this building lay the Guangaya shelter warehouse he had been longing for. Arriving at the door, before Liu could even knock, the iron gate swung open, revealing a group of survivors. Liu Ming spotted a familiar figure among the crowd, a sturdy figure, brimming with power. But this figure's calves were swollen, as thick as his thighs. The trouser legs were torn, revealing swellings like octopus suckers. His skin was bleeding crimson, as if blood was gushing beneath his skin, ready to burst. This was the injury that had plagued Fei Chenglin for the better part of a year, the wound that had ultimately led him to hell. It was this injury, the work of blood-sucking flies. While Liu Ming observed Fei Chenglin, he was also sizing him up. Huzi, Chengbing, who is this? An old friend who claims to be able to save you, Huzi replied as she handed the bundle of supplies she had gathered to the arriving companions. I don't recall such an old friend. Fei Chenglin thought briefly, before shaking his head. He then turned to Liu Ming and asked, Sir, do you know where my injury came from? I was bitten by a blood-sucking fly, and its parasitic eggs were injected into your body. These notorious insects not only feed on the blood of their prey, but also use the flesh and blood as a parasitic nest for their eggs. The strange swelling was caused by the eggs in the flesh of his calf, but these eggs were so tiny they were practically invisible to the naked eye. Can you cure this strange disease? Fei Chenglin's voice trembled. Since his injury, he had become practically disabled. Not only was he completely unable to use his right leg, but he was also constantly in excruciating pain, making even movement difficult and causing him unbearable suffering. Although Fei Chenglin was neither an awakened nor a professional, just an ordinary person, at best close to human limits, the swelling in his calf these past few days, coupled with a glimpse of the giant, hairy, blood-red fly he had seen during a battle a few days ago, made him believe he had been bitten by some venomous creature. As soon as Liu Ming said this, He knew the man before him was most likely telling the truth. As for why he knew he'd been bitten, he was already accustomed to seeing strange people with extraordinary abilities appearing in the apocalypse. As for why he'd come here directly under the pretext of healing him, that didn't matter, as long as his injury could be healed. Of course I can cure it, Liu Ming answered with absolute certainty. A complete treatment protocol for blood-sucking fly bites has been developed. While not simple, it's certainly not difficult either. The process is at most tedious and complex, and it was precisely these complex and tedious steps that had led Liu Ming to agree to save him. However, a complete cure would be a complex and lengthy process. You've been infected not only with the poison, but also with parasite eggs that have been injected into the wound. These eggs are extremely tiny and cannot be removed directly by surgery. Even if they could be, the conditions and equipment are currently lacking. At this point, Liu Ming paused, waiting for the other party to ask. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190, Smoke and Fire, Target Thinking. Fei Chenglun gritted his teeth and said, "Sir, as long as this strange injury can be cured, I'm willing to try any method and pay any price." Liu Ming smiled again and said lightly, "It's not a question of whether you are willing to try or not, nor is it a question of price. Don't you understand what I mean? This strange injury is not difficult to cure, but the difficulty lies in its tedious treatment process and long treatment cycle. And I will leave here soon, and it is impossible for me to stay and treat you until you recover." Fei Chenglun's face changed several times when he heard this, and he finally made a great determination and said, "If you don't mind, sir, then I will go with you until I'm cured." Team leader, do you really want to leave with this guy of unknown origin? Team leader, think twice. Let's not talk about whether he can really cure you. Even if he can, how can you deal with the monsters and countless dangers outside in your current state? Unlike Liu Ming, who smiled when he heard Fei Chenglun's decision, the faces of others all changed drastically and tried to dissuade him. "I've made up my mind," Fei Chenglun said calmly, waving his hand. Yet, anyone could hear the firmness in his voice and the determination in his demeanor. Only those who have truly experienced disability can understand the feeling of being powerless, especially in this apocalyptic world, where life is as fragile as paper and as cheap as an ant. Just a few days ago, he was the most powerful warrior in the entire shelter, the unwavering protector of everyone. He led every search for supplies, his status rivaling that of the two supernatural beings, Luo Huzi and Shu Chengbing. But after being accidentally bitten during a monster attack, he became a liability. While no one else considered him a liability, in his own eyes, he was. This was something he, a competitive man from his military career to his retirement, could not tolerate. He could accept death in battle, but not becoming disabled. And now, dragging his right leg, paralyzed and in excruciating pain, wasn't he a complete invalid? Since you've made up your mind, let's begin the first phase of treatment. Liu Ming spoke calmly, his words calmly addressed as everyone looked at him as a liar. He hadn't lied about the treatment, though he might have exaggerated a bit. However, curing an injury like the parasite eggs of a blood-sucking fly would take at least a week, a wound that even came and went and most current healers couldn't cure. Liu Ming had Fei Chenglun lie down on a 2 to 3 meter long conference table and used a dagger, provided by the shelter members, to cut open the wound on his calf. With a sizzling sound, blood spurted out instantly. Liu Ming avoided the source of the spray and struck the skin on the other side again. A second stream of blood spurted out. After 4 such cuts, the swelling on the calf had subsided slightly, but it swelled up again at a noticeable rate, like a leech that has absorbed a large amount of blood, transforming from shriveled to plump. Seeing his calf begin to swell again, Liu Ming immediately pulled out a handful of mugwort and a lighter from his pocket. As if by magic, he stuffed the mugwort directly into the 4 incisions on the calf, and then lit it. A sizzling sound of flesh burning echoed, and a grayish-white smoke enveloped Fei Chenglun's entire calf. Liu Ming was astonished to see Fei Chenglun, who, having expected a scream like a butchered pig, gritted his teeth and remained silent, unfazed by the raging flames. By the time all 4 handfuls of mugwort had been consumed, Fei Chenglan's calf was charred black. The strange, bright red swelling had mostly subsided, though the swelling was still noticeable. "You can get up now," Liu Ming said calmly, putting away the lighter. Fei Chenglan rose from the conference table. The first thing he did was to spit out a mouthful of saliva, which was a dark red hue, and his teeth were bloodshot. It seemed the burning pain wasn't as easy to endure as it looked. This guy practically gnashed his teeth. "This is just preliminary treatment. The wormwood isn't very effective. Your calf will swell up again tomorrow. Even though the swelling has subsided considerably, you should know you still have no strength in your right leg, and the excruciating pain won't be much less severe. As I said before, a complete cure is a complex and lengthy process." Seeing Fei Chenglan's eyes flash with joy as he touched his calf, Liu Ming poured a bucket of cold water on him. Fei Chenglan struggled to his feet, but this time he didn't ask for help. Once he stood, he bowed to Liu Ming and said sincerely, "But I'm feeling much better now. Thank you for your help, sir. It's just a piece of cake for me," Liu Ming said, dismissively. Before he came to this small shelter, Fei Chenglan had been on his list of people he wanted to take back, but he wasn't at the top of the list. His agreement to go with him had only fulfilled a small goal. There were 3 more targets ahead of him: Luo Huzi, Xu Chengbing, and Luo Huzi. To be honest, Liu Ming wasn't entirely confident about these 3 people. After all, his only chance of attracting them to follow him was his strength. But was he supposed to personally demonstrate his earth-shattering prowess and command their admiration? That was sheer nonsense. Even Luo Changyuan's group wouldn't have been able to leave their temporary food security villa complex if Luo Changyuan hadn't kept his promise and insisted on following him, persuading his men to leave as well. Not to mention the smaller shelter, which was clearly outnumbered by the elderly, the weak, women, and children who couldn't handle the long journey. He remembered that it was because these elderly, the weak, women, and children couldn't keep up with the younger and stronger ones, that everyone was unsure of reaching the relocation point in time, leading them to abandon their plan to follow the army to the eastern safe zone. He didn't believe his own appeal was greater than that of thousands of powerful troops. Therefore, a display of force wasn't realistic, but without it, it wouldn't work either. Without a guarantee of safety, no one would be convinced in the apocalypse. While force was essential, it wasn't the only solution. Other avenues were necessary to ensure their willingness to follow him. Liu Ming didn't want to resort to coercion against Luo Huzi and the others who had shown him favors unless absolutely necessary. "How are the supplies in your shelter? They seem quite scarce," Liu Ming asked casually. But that very question instantly solidified the atmosphere, which had just been easing. Discussing supplies between 2 people who had just met in the apocalypse wasn't a wise topic. Supplies represented survival, and the competition for survival was even more brutal in the apocalypse. Chapter 191: Pure Water and Food. Final Decision. Amidst the piercing gazes of the crowd, Liu Ming's mind flickered with memories. He couldn't count how many times he'd witnessed murderous clashes over mere sustenance, a few drops of water, and food. These acts of survival, unscrupulous and unstoppable, were destined to continue from the moment the apocalypse struck. But at the dawn of the apocalypse, when order had yet to return to chaos, they seemed even more brutal and ruthless. Cases of family, loved ones, and friends savage each other were countless. Compared to his memories of the early days, Liu Ming felt his current life was akin to a paradise. However, this life was hard-earned, requiring countless life or death experiences. To avoid losing it, he must continue to surpass others in strength. In the apocalypse, everyone on the path of evolution pursued nothing more than greater abilities, talents, specialties, and, ultimately, greater power. The acquisition of these abilities and the increase in strength were invariably accompanied by bloodshed and slaughter. The fastest path to increasing ability and strength was paved with blood. How many of the seemingly superior evolved ones, in the eyes of ordinary people, actually envy the hard-earned but peaceful lives of ordinary people in the safe zone? Whether we're short of supplies shouldn't really concern you, right? Liu Huzi, the big sister who had always cared for Liu Ming in her memory, now looked at him with a glare of anger. Liu Huzi felt that bringing this man back from unknown origins might have been a mistake. He had deceived their important companion, Fei Qinglan, by pretending to be a miracle doctor through smoky tricks, and now he was boasting about the supplies in the shelter. His true colors had been revealed. This guy's next move might be to offer us more supplies in exchange for transferring some to him, a common tactic used by con artists in peacetime. Your lips are chapped. Are you short of water? Liu Ming observed the subtle features of the people in Guangzhou. Guangzhou was located in the suburbs. After the disaster, not only did the city lose electricity and gas, but the running water also stopped soon after. Therefore, for many survivors, lack of drinking water was the most critical threat. Without food, some could survive for even 10.5 months, but without water, few could survive more than 3 days. It was a cliched scam. Liu Huzi grumbled inwardly. What, you got water? Liu Huzi asked sarcastically. Liu Ming smiled faintly, reached into his pocket, and tossed a cylindrical object toward Liu Huzi. Catch it. Liu Huzi instinctively caught the object, then exclaimed in surprise, after seeing what she was holding. Mineral water? The word Nongfu Spring came into view. Something was off about the plot. Was there another charade before the scam? Why are you giving me pure water? Liu Huzi asked, swallowing visibly. She must have been thirsty for a long time. I'm not short of water, and I'm certainly not short of food, Liu Ming said. 3 packets of beef jerky suddenly appeared in his hand, tossing them to Shu Chengbing, Fei Qinglan, and a man from the search team who was also familiar to him. The man, whose well-dressed shirt couldn't conceal his muscular frame, was Li Zhu, a father attending a parenting class and a physical education teacher at Wuling University. He was also a key member of the search team. After Liu Ming joined the Guangzhou shelter, he had often taken care of him while leading the search team in search of supplies. Liu Ming, always a man with a clear distinction between love and hate, naturally wouldn't be stingy with a piece of food. Liu Huzi's face turned slightly sour. He clearly had ulterior motives for showing favor to his own people in front of her. Angrily, she threw the bottle of mineral water back and yelled, "So what if you have food?" This surprised Liu Huzi. Liu Ming, unmoved, simply took the bottle, unscrewed the cap, and then handed it to her, saying softly, "Drink it." She gulped. Liu Huzi stared at the already opened bottle of pure water before him, thinking back to how he'd survived these days, relying on rainwater and even sewage. He swallowed hard, then gritted his teeth through cracked lips. "What on earth do you want? Bring the entire Guangzhou population and Fei Qinglan with you. Once you're on my territory, you won't have to struggle for water or food anymore," Liu Ming stated bluntly. A flicker of determination flashed in Liu Huzi's eyes. He snatched the water Liu Ming offered, took a deep gulp, and carefully replaced the lid. He licked the water from his lips before slowly speaking. "Go with you? I can sense you're strong, perhaps even more powerful than Chengbing and I, but if you're looking for support from us, then go ahead. You probably don't know, but there are more than just a few of us. There are hundreds of elderly, weak, women, and children inside, and we must protect them. I'm talking about the entire Guangzhou survivors, including those inside," Liu Ming said calmly. Upon hearing this, Liu Huzi's eyes flashed with shock and confusion. During the military and political evacuation a few days ago, they had originally planned to move with the other survivors of Guangzhou building, but because their group was too full of elderly and children, they were unable to catch up with the main force and were abandoned, forcing them to abandon the evacuation. This was the first time she had seen someone offer to take in a group of elderly, weak, women, and children. It took her a while to react, but she finally recovered and asked, "Aren't you afraid that we'll be burdened by hundreds of them? There are only a dozen of us who can actually fight the monsters. The rest are all children from 3 or 4 to 50 or 60 years old. What are you planning?" She thought for a moment, then added, as if to add to her plan, "A bunch of old, weak, and sick people who don't even have the strength to work. How can I take you back to eat you? Even if I take you back as laborers, you're useless. I just want to save a few people out of kindness, can't I? Casey, tell him what I'm planning on doing with you," Liu Ming said with a hint of impatience. KZ, having been called out, could only bite the bullet and speak for Liu Ming. We, like you, just met the master today. The master, with his kindness, cured our boss's wife of a serious illness and is willing to take us back to his refuge. It was only because of the boss's presence that we escaped any monster attacks all the way here. I can sense the master doesn't have the ulterior motives you think. He's a good man. Although he knew the future was uncertain, and he didn't know whether following the master to that legendary refuge would lead to enslavement, forced to work like slaves until death, or whether other hardships awaited him, he knew that seizing the opportunity to flatter the master would surely make his future easier. He was secretly pleased with himself for volunteering to follow the master down. Even if he was taken back to do hard labor, at least he would be a familiar coolie to the master, perhaps even a coolie leader. You've heard what he said. It's up to you to decide whether you want to come with me or not. There's one thing I can guarantee, life in my territory is definitely much better than living like moles in a dark underground warehouse, eating mud and drinking sewage. Liu Ming was very satisfied with KZ's flattery, and then he looked at Luo Huzi solemnly and said, Chapter 192 Persuasion and Decision, Dilemma Doctor. After a flurry of discussion, Xu Chengbing suddenly spoke up. We need to discuss this. After all, we still have hundreds of companions. I'll meet you upstairs. Give me an answer once we've discussed it. Liu Ming nodded in agreement and prepared to leave. Luo Huzi suddenly spoke to stop him. Come with us. Perhaps a meeting will help our companions get to know you better. Behind the warehouse's security shutters stood a steel door. Originally, it was electrically powered, using fingerprint and iris recognition to open and close. But after the power outage, the only way in was through a small door embedded in it. Fei Chenglan entered the password into the electronic lock keypad, unlocking a keyhole. He then took out a brass key, inserted it into the lock, twisted the cylinder, and opened the iron door. Everyone filed in. As soon as they entered the iron gate, a burst of childish cries accompanied by tiny figures charging towards them. Not only were Luo Huzi and the others surrounded by these tiny figures, but even KZ and Liu Ming had a few tiny creatures hanging from their bodies. KZ couldn't help but exclaim, "What the hell is going on? Master, are we in kindergarten?" KZ was speechless once again when he saw who was coming. He saw that they were surrounded by a group of little kids, no older than 6, who were clinging to them with all their might, like caged puppies who couldn't help but play around with something new. Luo Huzi put down his crude weapon and gently picked up a little girl who hadn't gathered around them, instead hiding in a dark corner, somewhat withdrawn. With a wry smile, he asked, "These are the elderly, the weak, women, and children I mentioned. Do you have the confidence to safely transport these little ones to your territory? With your strength, you should be able to reach the military and government protection area. Why don't you abandon them?" KZ asked, a flicker of confusion in his eyes, but his question only drew the ire of the others. This girl's name is Suma. It was her father who single-handedly led off a horde of monsters, saving our lives. The price was Suma's transformation from a lively and lovely little girl to the silent and withdrawn one she is now, and her father never returned. Luo Huzi slowly emerged from behind the crowd of little people, her bright eyes fixed on KZ. Hearing this, KZ, the loud-mouthed and clueless fellow, felt his face flush with the stare, and he said, a little embarrassed, "Sorry, I slipped up." "Sister, who are they?" Luo Huzi didn't accept KZ's apology, but pointed at Liu Ming and the other man, and asked him bluntly. Luo Huzi sighed slightly and briefly recounted Liu Ming's origins and purpose. "You mean he just used his shabby so-called medical skills to treat a baboon's injuries?" Luo Huzi was clearly being rude to everyone, simply referring to Fei Chenglan as a baboon. "Yes. That sharp-nosed, monkey-faced fellow. Did he also save your companions?" Luo Huzi asked, looking directly at KZ. After receiving a positive answer, KZ was very unhappy with Luo Huzi's address, but on someone else's territory, especially when the master he relied on was suspected of winning over others, he was able to judge the situation and replied honestly, but his words were a little fierce. "How can you talk like that, girl? How can I be sharp-nosed and monkey-faced? I'm thin and handsome. Also, the master's methods are as you can imagine. He used his skillful hands and fierce operations to save our brother Luo's wife from the brink of death. It can be said that she was brought back to life. Now the patient is able to jump around well. After listening to Kei's narration, Luo Zahuzi looked at him with scrutiny and suspicion for a long time and then said, "Sister, let's go with him. Why are you looking at me? Don't just stand there, pack up and get ready to go." Luo Huzi and Shu Chengbing were confused. They didn't know why Luo Zahuzi changed so quickly from being somewhat hostile to two strangers. Liu Ming had already convinced them. After all, Fei Chenglan and his 6 or 7 surviving guards were the shelter's strongest security. If Fei Chenglan left, his men would likely follow him, leaving only 5 or 6 members able and physically fit to search for supplies. The rest were women, the elderly, the infirm, and a large number of young children, making it impossible for them to survive. However, the main reason they didn't agree to Liu Ming's request was their fear of Luo Zahuzi's disapproval. It was Luo Zahuzi who had vehemently opposed the original plan to move to the safe zone despite everyone's unanimous agreement. As she had predicted, the elderly and children, unable to keep up with the larger group, were abandoned and ultimately forced to return to the shelter. So, this time, everyone wanted to hear her opinion before making a decision, but to their surprise, she agreed without hesitation. "Xiaohu, aren't you going to reconsider this? Hundreds of lives are at stake," Luo Huzi asked. Luo Zahuzi talked about everyone's predicament with some impatience. "What are you thinking about? Get ready to go quickly. Xiaohu has a high fever again. Xiao Qiang's last inflammation has not healed, but has become more serious. Bing Bing's grandmother has been vomiting and having diarrhea for almost a week after drinking sewage. She is about to die. Now only this barefoot doctor who is said to be able to bring the dead back to life can save them. What else do you want me to think about? And even if their illness is cured by luck this time, they will have to rely on drinking sewage all day long in the future. We don't mind, but have you thought about how long these little guys can last?" A trace of pain flashed in Luo Zahuzi's eyes, and he said with a sad expression, "You are right. I have failed to take good care of them. Sister, this is something we can't do anything about. If you want to blame someone, blame this damn doomsday," Luo Zahuzi said viciously. "Zao-hui." Seeing that Luo Huzi was about to continue, Liu Ming's eyes showed some impatience, and he interrupted. "Okay, time for reminiscing is over. I'll give you 20 minutes. Get in the car at the entrance of Guangyu building in 20 minutes. I'll get you to your destination safely." After that, he led Keizi out of the warehouse door. "Master, are you really going to take them away?" Keizi asked impatiently as they walked out. Liu Ming said with a half smile, "Why, I can take you away, but not them? No, that's not what I mean, Master. Nearly 1/3 of them have children. I'm afraid." Keizi said hesitantly. Liu Ming smiled and said, "Are you afraid I can't protect them? They'd be safer here?" Keizi's face paled. How could he dare let the master know he doubted him? With a wry smile, he quickly explained, "Master, how could I not trust your abilities? I'm just worried about all those little brats causing us trouble." And Liu Ming glanced at Keizi, halting his words. He ordered bluntly, "Stop the nonsense. I'll give you 10 minutes to find 3 buses or trucks." "Master, isn't it 20 minutes? Keizi was stunned. How could 10 minutes be possible? "Why can't you do it?" Liu Ming, his right hand lightly pressing on the hilt of his Jufeng sword, looked at Keizi with a quizzical expression. "I guarantee you'll complete the mission." Keizi wisely ran away before Liu Ming could draw his Jufeng. He quickly ran to the convoy left behind by Luo Changyuan to relay Liu Ming's orders. Then, with 7 or 8 other men, he split into 2 teams and dispersed to find a moving truck. Chapter 193, It's a Small World, A Strange Death, Part 1. At 9 minutes and 45 seconds, a bus and 2 heavy trucks were parked in a row in front of Liu Ming, more than enough to carry 100 people. Keizi, panting, stepped off the lead bus, saying, "Master, it's not that I didn't want to find a bus, but this was the only empty one that could accommodate passengers. The other stranded buses were in a worse than life state, littered with bodies. So, we found 2 spacious trucks. Liu Ming looked at the 3 trucks before him, nodded in satisfaction, and said, "You've met my expectations. Now, apply this to the wounds, to quickly stop the bleeding and heal them." With that, Liu Ming generously tossed a blood-inducing potion to KZ. He and his companions, who had emerged from the buses one after another, were all bruised, each suffering some degree of injury. It was clear that finding these 3 trucks in 10 minutes had taken a considerable amount of effort. KZ took the blood potion with skepticism, but under Liu Ming's watchful gaze, he dared not hesitate. Gritting his teeth, he poured some out and smeared it on the wound on his left arm. Suddenly, a cool sensation washed over the wound, dispelling the pain and sending a shock through his heart. Then, seeing that the bleeding wound on his left arm had stopped immediately after being smeared with the mysterious blood-red substance, and the wound was even showing signs of healing, he almost instantly regarded Liu Ming as a true miracle healer. He smeared a handful of the blood potion on another wound before reluctantly passing it on to the others. Everyone who had used it shared KZ's expression in shock. Previously, when Liu Ming had treated their brother Luo's wife, they had only known she had been saved, not having witnessed the process firsthand, so they hadn't fully grasped the true impact. But now, they understood the benefits of the mysterious potion in their hands with a tangible and intangible sense of reality. After the last person had used the blood potion, it was still quite full, with perhaps 1/7 or 1/8 of the dose remaining. KZ obediently handed the remaining secret medicine to Liu Ming. Liu Ming waved his hand, saying, "I have plenty of this potion, keep it." Naturally, Liu Ming wouldn't begrudge a single dose of blood potion to a subordinate who had completed his orders to his satisfaction, even though he knew that in the apocalypse, a life-saving blood potion could often be worth more than a life itself. Nearly 20 minutes after Liu Ming left the basement of Guangzhou building, Luo Huzi and Xu Chengbing finally arrived with their men. They were stunned to see 3 trucks, nearly a story tall, parked outside the building, with 3 drivers already seated. Only the children gazed at the vehicles with curiosity. "Teacher Luo, that car is even bigger than the one we took on our outing. Should we get on, Teacher Luo?" A group of children asked Luo Huzi timidly, trying to get on. It seemed the cruelty of the apocalypse had made them aware of the dangers. Everyone, wait a minute, let me ask first. Luo Huzi, always wary of Liu Ming and somewhat fierce, was unusually gentle with the children. Seeing Luo Huzi turn her head to look at him, Liu Ming knew she was going to ask about the vehicle. Before she could say anything, he made the arrangements. All adults will take the bus, and the remaining adults will take the children and the trucks. Don't ask me why. Trucks are safer than buses. 3 strong combat-ready men will be assigned to each truck. Xu Chengbing, Luo Huzi, and Fei Qinglan. The 3 of you will take the passenger seats in each of the 3 vehicles. Liu Ming's arrangement was well reasoned, and everyone agreed. Following Luo Huzi's instructions, they boarded the vehicles one by one. Luo Huzi ensured that each child was accompanied by at least 1 adult. After everyone boarded their vehicles, Liu Ming walked from the rear to the front of the convoy and reiterated the final crucial message. Drivers of all 5 vehicles, I repeat, destination, the train station. Follow the vehicles ahead closely. If you get separated, rendezvous at the train station. Convoy, set off. Amidst a wave of trepidation, Liu Ming's command led the 5 large vehicles, led by the lead SUV, towards Chengxi railway station. While the road conditions weren't particularly good, the military and political convoy had recently cleared the road, and most of the broken down vehicles had been moved to the side, leaving just enough space for the convoy to pass. Even when blocked, a massive black shadow flashed by, completely blowing away the roadblocks. While the fear and anxiety in the eyes of the Guangzhou shelter's men at the sight of the massive figure were palpable, Luo Changyuan's men, those who had seen Ji Zhirang in person, remained composed and composed. Knowing he was Liu Ming's pet, they displayed no trace of nervousness or fear. There are several routes from the east to the west of the city, and Liu Ming chose the one that led to the densely populated university town. Wuling's several universities are all located in the university town in the North City New District. Although it houses nearly 100,000 faculty and students, the residential and commercial areas are less prosperous, resulting in a relatively low population density compared to the main urban area. This is why Liu Ming chose to pass through there. Wuling's University Town in the North City New District houses the region's top scientific research capabilities, making it a key area of focus for military and political leaders during the rescue operation. The laboratories and research institutes of several universities were particularly heavily assisted. At least 1/6 of the entire Wuling military sub-district's forces were dispatched to the university town for rescue efforts. However, this did not mean that the university town would be a lucky escape. While the rescue forces here were numerous, their goals and priorities were more clearly defined. Scholars with distinguished research in fields like physics, chemistry, biochemistry, electronics, and biology, as well as graduate students and doctoral students, were placed at the top of the military's rescue list. Next came prominent university leaders, faculty, and students, and finally, the vast majority of ordinary students and faculty. Most of the first two groups were successfully rescued and taken to a safe haven, ultimately participating in the massive evacuation that resulted in countless casualties. Of the last group, only a small fraction made it to safety with the rescue team. The rest, for various reasons, were stranded in this university town, shrouded in silence and despair. Li Mao was one of these survivors. He lacked a talent for research, having studied sports, and lacked a prominent family background. Ultimately, he was stranded in this hopeless place, along with his fellow struggling classmates. He worried daily about food and water, risking his life to snatch prey from the monster's claws. Li Mao, hunched over, his tall, muscular body nimble like a leopard in the forest, striding over car wreckage and the bloodied corpses of countless others. While cursing this damn apocalypse, he and his two companions walked in this ruined city looking for food. Chapter 194, It's a Small World, A Strange Death, Part 2. After wandering for half an hour with two classmates and finding nothing, Li Mao couldn't help but grow anxious. If he still couldn't find any supplies, he would have to return to his temporary shelter with the other students. Otherwise, surrounded by more than 5 monsters, they would all be dead. While their muscular build and powerful shoulders might make them look more formidable than the next, facing a bloodthirsty, brutal, and inhuman monster, their appearance wouldn't matter. They saw everyone as a piece of fresh meat, a pile of movable food. Boom boom boom. Just as Li Mao and his companions searched a small grocery store again with no results, silently cursing and feeling discouraged, the roar of a car approached. Hearing the distinctive rumble of a vehicle, Li Mao's expression was filled with excitement, and he quickly listened to the source of the roar. In the apocalypse, the roar of a car generally signified life, since monsters couldn't drive. Anyone capable of driving recklessly through the apocalypse must be incredibly powerful. If they could catch a ride and join this group, escaping this desperate place where they barely have a meal, it wouldn't be a bad idea. Brotherly, did you hear that too? A classmate beside Li Mao, with a crew cut and a leather vest, asked excitedly. Li Mao quickly replied, yes, we heard it. Hurry and look. The turning point we've been waiting for has finally arrived. Here it is, the last, more composed student said solemnly, his eyes fixed on a specific direction. Everyone looked, only to see that he was looking in the direction Liu Ming and his team were speeding towards. In the leads of, Liu Changyuan spotted 3 survivors stopped by the roadside, jumping and waving frantically. He called out to Liu Ming, there are people there. A flicker of shock crossed Liu Ming's eyes, but he maintained a calm demeanor and replied, I saw it. It's a small world. What do you mean by small? Liu Changyuan asked hurriedly, not understanding the second half of Liu Ming's words. Nothing, Liu Ming replied casually, but his mental energy, like drops of blood plunging into the ocean, frantically attracted the attention of the ferocious man-eating shark-like monsters of the deep sea. Suddenly, Liu Ming felt compassion for the people and said, with a merciful expression, slow down. Oh, okay. Liu Changyuan was stunned, clearly unconvinced that Liu Ming would slow down for 3 strangers, but he obeyed anyway. Just as the convoy was about to stop on the roadside not far from the 3 people, a ferocious roar rang out, sending their souls trembling. Hiss. The monsters they had been avoiding were finally drawn out by the roar of the convoy, and cannibal corpses burst out from the buildings. Keep slowing down, and let them get on, Liu Ming said calmly, looking at the already uneasy people in the car. Just as everyone thought he was about to continue saving people, no one saw the strange smile that suddenly appeared on Liu Ming's face. Save people. Save Li Mao, the man who had harmed him for 10 years. Was he not insane yet? Letting him on board now would only make his death more horrible later. Run. The monsters are almost here. We're almost there. Please slow down, master, please. The three men, their lives hanging by a thread, screamed in terror as they ran. In front of the SUV's already open door, a cannibal corpse grabbed hold of their clothes. With a sudden effort, one of them tore off his clothes and scrambled aboard. Finally aboard. Thanks, brother. You saved our 3 lives. Li Mao said, still chatting familiarly after climbing aboard. Such a sickening and familiar voice. Liu Ming was overwhelmed with emotion. This was the man who had killed hundreds of people in the Guangaya shelter, and this was also the man who had caused his own tragic death. Although he had ultimately suffered the consequences of his sins and died at his own hands, how could his one worthless life be worth the lives of hundreds of others? We're all struggling to survive in this apocalypse. Helping each other is only natural, Liu Ming said righteously, looking at the disheveled Li Mao. If it weren't for Liu Ming's full beard and piercing eyes, which gave him a somewhat menacing aura, Li Mao and the other two would have almost thought they'd encountered a rare benevolent figure in the apocalypse. Seeing no response from Liu Ming, the awkward silence set in. Li Mao, the shrewd man, immediately chimed in. You're right, brother. We're all in this together, and it's only natural for us to help each other. We are juniors in the physical education department at Wuling University. Which school are you from? Li Mao asked. Chatting up and chatting with strangers was a specialty of his, the head of the Wuling Student Union's publicity department. Me. I went to Wuling No. 1 high school, but I dropped out before graduation. Liu Ming replied, smiling at Li Mao. He had arrived at the Guangaya shelter before Li Mao, a latecomer, but one who had risen to prominence, quickly becoming a key figure in the small shelter. One reason was his ability to leverage his strengths. Upon entering the shelter, he repeatedly emphasized his identity as a college student, which quickly lowered everyone's guard. After all, in the apocalypse, criminals, villains, and ambitious individuals abound, and a college student is inherently more trustworthy. After all, fresh-faced and untouched by society's taint, a student exudes innocence and trustworthiness. However, no one anticipated that nothing is certain, and their lives would soon be at the hands of this student, who had been at the shelter for only 2 months. After Liu Ming revealed his academic credentials, the room fell silent again, and it was Li Mao who opened the conversation again. Haha, brother, with only a high school diploma, you can lead a team of so many people to survive in this perilous apocalypse. You're obviously a reputable figure. After all, a hero's origins are not judged. Hey, driver, which school are you from? From the moment Li Mao climbed into the 7-seat, 3-rotor and SUV, he immediately noticed that the most prominent people in the car were the sturdy driver and the calm Liu Ming in the passenger seat, so he spoke most to them. Hey, my education is barely higher than the boss next to me. I just graduated from high school. I can't compare to you, a top student. Luo Changyuan emphasized the last 3 words top student, making the originally ordinary response feel tense and tense. The atmosphere was temporarily oppressive. As a veteran with 20 years of experience in the world, Luo Changyuan naturally saw from Liu Ming's expression, tone, and eyes that he disliked this man with his smooth talk. Since Liu Ming, the expert he had decided to follow from now on, disliked this man, he naturally felt a natural hostility towards him. Although he didn't understand why Liu Ming would save someone he disliked. Chapter 195. It's a Small World, A Strange Death, Part 2. The 6-vehicle convoy initially sailed smoothly through the city streets. Outside the window, the ever-changing scenery rapidly faded, and the sunlight was radiant. If it weren't for the occasional monster roars, everyone would have felt as if they were back in peacetime, traveling by car. This was all thanks to Liu Ming's mental power, which had dispelled most of the cannibal corpses. After several rounds of development and improvement of his Lord Brain Core, Liu Ming's mental power now rivaled the control most lords possess over their own cannibal corpses. when encountering powerful monsters that his mental power alone couldn't dislodge, Zhenliang's massive form would instantly vanish, leaving few monsters able to withstand a single attack from this behemoth. The Zuaniu and Dragon Salamander fully functioned as a scavenger, quickly clearing a clear path for the convoy, allowing each vehicle to pass quickly and efficiently, leaving the military roadblock clearing vehicles several blocks behind. With the train station in sight, about 4 or 5 minutes away, a sudden outburst erupted from a bus in the middle of the convoy. Oh my god. The fuel's almost gone. My bus is about to break down. With that, the bus's speed slowly slowed until it finally came to a complete stop. The driver was none other than one of Liu Changyuan's men, Brother Ji Longji, a veteran truck driver rumored to have over a decade of experience. Since even he, considered one of the most skilled drivers in the group, was forced to stop, it proved the bus was truly running low on fuel. Everyone, stop. With the third bus breaking down, the cars behind it had no choice but to stop, and Liu Ming had no choice but to order all vehicles to a complete stop. All drivers, report your fuel levels. Drivers and passengers, stay in your vehicles. KZ and I will get out to count the fuel levels. Liu Ming opened the door of the sub and exited first, commanding KZ without turning back. Car number 1, 9 liters. This was the fuel level of the lead SUV. Car number 2, 18 liters. This was the truck following closely behind. Car number 3, 0.5 liters. The driver of the third bus, the stalled passenger bus, Longji, said with a doleful expression. After the fuel levels of all 6 vehicles were counted, KZ quickly ran to Liu Ming's side and reported the fuel levels of each vehicle. The 5th vehicle had the most fuel. That Dongfeng heavy truck still had a full 70 or 80 liters of diesel. Liu Ming immediately ordered KZ to lead his men to pump the fuel from the Dongfeng truck and refill it into the tank of the stalled passenger bus. KZ was unfamiliar with this kind of oil pumping and draining procedure, but it was a daily routine for Liu Ming. Following his instructions, KZ opened the valve in the fuel port, then inserted a fuel hose from the truck into the tank, and began to suck the diesel out through the airflow. However, while inhaling, KZ nearly inhaled the diesel fuel. He glared at Liu Ming with resentment as he did so. Liu Ming held a plastic bucket he picked up next to the straw, ready to draw more fuel. Damn it. Hurry up. Hard. Deep breaths. Harder. Don't waste time with me. Liu Ming commanded, cursing as he used his mental power to locate his 3 minions. The train station was only a few minutes away, and this area should have been the range of his 3 mutant minions. Found it. Liu Ming beamed. In his mind, 3 figures loomed on the road not far away, dashing past with a gust of wind. Leading the group was a deformed mutant with bony blades on its arms. It hunched over, its legs bent, its arms supporting the ground and swinging rapidly, like a ferocious beast on all 4s hunting. 2 other mutants with shield hammers and a bone spur cannon chamber followed closely behind it, 1 on each side. Behind the 3 mutants came a swarm of ordinary cannibal corpses, with more monsters gradually joining their ranks. It was common knowledge among all professionals in later generations that stronger mutants could naturally drive weaker cannibal corpses, and this menacing horde of monsters was heading directly towards the convoy, specifically Liu Ming's position. Just as the 3 mutants, leading the horde, approached the convoy within a kilometer, Liu Changyuan suddenly popped his head out the window and shouted to Liu Ming, who was still refueling, "Boss, something's happening. I'm feeling a palpitation too." Xu Chengbing continued. Luo Huzi also said solemnly, "I have a premonition of impending danger." Liu Ming nodded slightly at the 3 nervous faces, patted KZ's shoulder, who was still struggling to draw in the oil, and handed him the oil drum. He remained calm and instructed, "This should be enough. KZ, go pour this oil into that car's tank. Hurry." KZ unhooked the oil hose, nodded emphatically, picked up the oil drum, and rushed to the 3rd stranded bus. Liu Ming walked over to the SUV, opened the back door, and instructed Li Mao and the other 2, who were chatting and laughing in their seats, "You 3, one of you get out and help fill the tank." The relaxed expressions of the 3 who had just escaped the disaster froze at this. Why us? Why don't they get out? Although the 3 didn't say this out loud, Liu Ming could clearly see the meaning in their shocked expressions. Liu Ming then seemed to point at Li Mao, who was sitting between the three of them, with a half smile on his face. He said, "It's you." Seeing Li Mao's look of shock at being pointed at, Liu Ming said in a slightly cold tone, "Get off now. Don't make me treat you again." At that, the tall man seemed to hunch over and reluctantly followed Liu Ming out of the bus. At this point, only Liu Ming and Casey had gotten off. No one knew what danger lay outside, and since they were safe inside, naturally no one wanted to get off. However, Li Mao couldn't help but get off. Under Liu Ming's piercing gaze, he could only obediently walk towards Casey and help him lift the fuel drum so he could fill it. Monsters. Monsters are coming. So many. A sudden commotion erupted on the bus. Li Mao turned around and saw dark figures at the end of the road rapidly approaching the convoy. It seemed they would be over in a matter of minutes. The shadowy figure hadn't even reached them yet, but the terrifying roars had already reached them, sending the convoy into a state of panic. Li Mao, his spirits trembling, instinctively tried to abandon the oil drum and rush for the car, but Casey's powerful arm held him firmly. "What are you freaking out for? The fuel isn't even finished yet. If you don't hold on tight, it'll spill all over me." Casey's voice was irritated. Li Mao had subconsciously shaken the drum, and a few drops of the remaining diesel had splattered onto Casey's face. He wiped the diesel off his cheek and looked at Li Mao with a sour expression. Li Mao was both amazed at the strength of this seemingly small man and trembling with fear at the approaching monster. Unable to break free from Casey's grip, he could only hold the drum high and pour the fuel. Nearly 300 meters away, among the three figures charging at the forefront of the surging monsters, the slender figure on the left suddenly hunched over, a white beam of light radiating from its back. Puff! The white light shot straight through Li Mao's body and nailed him to the ground. Blood covered his head and face and soaked Casey standing next to him. Chapter 196 Thrilling Journey, My Territory. Get in the car. Liu Ming, who was standing in front of the SUV, suddenly turned and shouted at Casey. Li Mao, pinned to the ground by a massive bone spur through his chest, wasn't quite dead yet. He was still struggling, foaming at the mouth, and reaching out his right hand toward Casey, begging for help. This momentarily gave Casey pause. "He's injured. Do you want me to get him in the car? Get in the car now." Liu Ming shouted a second time, his voice even deeper. This was a sign of his anger. If Casey still refused to get in, he might not have to. Li Mao had been suddenly attacked and severely injured, and his two companions were now agitated, clamoring to get out and rescue him. However, the car door had been locked by Liu Changyu the moment the monster appeared. Seeing no one was willing to help, the two could only shout, "Why aren't you saving him? Open the door. If we don't save him now, the monster will arrive, and it will be too late." Liu Ming said with a strange expression, "Saved him? Great. Open the door and let them get out and rescue him." Wow. As soon as Liu Changyu unlocked the car, the two men opened the door and rushed out. This showed that their feelings for Li Mao were genuine. With a monster so close, they dared to risk their lives to save him. But whether or not their feelings were genuine was none of Liu Ming's business. "Drive," Liu Ming commanded Liu Changyu as the two men left, running towards Li Mao's half-dead body. Surprised, Liu Changyu asked uncertainly, "What?" "I said start the engine. Drive now," Liu Ming repeated, giving Liu Changyu a cold look. Boom. As Liu Ming finished his words, the roar of a car suddenly erupted. "Stop. Stop now. There's someone else. We haven't even gotten in yet." Seeing the convoy actually start, the two men who were rescuing Li Mao were startled. They immediately abandoned the dying Li Mao and ran towards the speeding vehicles. But they were too late. Cars were speeding past them one after another. One man, attempting to climb onto a car door, was struck by a speeding truck and thrown into a pool of blood. The convoy, led by the SUV, crushed countless monsters like steel beasts, carving a bloody path through the horde. As the convoy moved on, the monsters arrived, and the remaining man and Li Mao, who hadn't been knocked away, became their feast. Amidst the sounds of tearing and gnawing, the screams of the three men gradually faded, and the convoy receded into the distance, until it vanished. In the eyes of the survivors, Liu Ming's image became even more formidable and steely. Everyone looked at him with less ease and more fear and other emotions. But Liu Ming, paid no attention to their thoughts. He was overwhelmed by a sense of elation. The disgusting Li Mao was finally dead, and he had finally put his mind at ease. Although Li Mao's death was caused by the cannon of a bone-spurred cannon mutant, and the mutant had attacked under Liu Ming's command and control, and had precisely delivered the fatal blow to Li Mao under his control, Liu Ming insisted that he had brought it upon himself. Liu Ming was now in high spirits. The train station was within reach. Not only was Li Mao dead, but Luo Huzi and the others had also been safely brought back. He had also picked up Luo Changyuan, a future weapons master. Adding to his previous gains, he was already quite satisfied with the outcome of this trip. But as the saying goes, good fortune never comes alone. Less than 10 kilometers from the train station, a ferocious figure, flapping its wings like a blazing cloud, soared towards the convoy. Pa, pa. Amidst the eerie sounds of falling objects, Liu Ming's face darkened. Rotten winged corpses. This was the collective name for birds that had mutated into cannibalistic corpses, given their ability to fly and their rotting flesh. Monsters like these, known as Jizerong, are incredibly difficult to deal with due to their agility and speed. Once they soar over 100 meters, even the most powerful Jizerong attack will be useless if it misses. Go, half-a. Liu Ming commanded, stroking the winged dragon snake that wrapped around his wrist like a bracelet. As the convoy gasped in shock, Arfei leaped from the speeding vehicles. His body swelled in the wind, instantly transforming into a massive behemoth that obscured the sky. Roar, ah, ah. Arfei let out a deafening roar, blocking the path of a massive corpse eagle, resembling a mutated falcon, at the head of the rotting winged corpses. This C-class mutant, seemingly possessed of its own primordial intelligence, seemed timid in its approach, afraid to fly any further. Boom. Arfei paid no attention to whether the creature continued to approach the convoy. Since his master had tasked him with resolving the situation, he naturally chose the simplest solution. A stream of yellow, devouring fire suddenly erupted from its mouth, instantly incinerating the vast dark mass of flying creatures in the sky. Each one fell with a clattering sound, its rotting wings pitted and burnt, unable to flap for flight. The convoy had advanced several hundred meters, and after dispatching the horde, Arfei, with its head held high, slowly shrank back into the SUV, before everyone's astonishment. It once again coiled around Liu Ming's wrist. "Thank you for your hard work," Liu Ming said, stroking its tiny head with his index and middle fingers. A few minutes later, a high, orange-red wall suddenly appeared at the end of the convoy's sight. "What's that? Is this a weird thing? When did a wall appear at the train station? I've never heard of the government building a wall here in peacetime. Could it have been built after the apocalypse? Look, what are those tall towers outside the wall? Oh my god, is that a secret military bunker? Is there a regular army stationed here?" Seeing the scene outside the train station, everyone's emotions were boiling, and they were talking non-stop. The area that once belonged to the Wuling train station square had been enclosed by a wall as solid as a city wall. "Welcome to my territory," Liu Ming said loudly with a chuckle at the stunned crowd. As Liu Ming finished his words, the orange-red wall suddenly opened, revealing a silver-grey steel-like gate. A large group of people, dressed in various clothes, but with a strong aura, rushed out, all looking at the convoy with excited expressions. This scene puzzled the people in the convoy. They had no relatives or friends, so why were they looking at them so excitedly? But those with an open mind understood that these people were most likely not coming to greet him, but rather to pick up the only person present who had the potential to be so excited, Liu Ming. As expected, as the convoy approached, cheers like a tsunami erupted. "Boss, you're finally back. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 197 Goddess Supervisor. I'm the Demon King. The survivors in the convoy desperately wanted to get through the steel gate encased in a high wall as quickly as possible. Though no one knew what life would hold, it at least meant safety. If such a high wall couldn't guarantee their safety, these people didn't know where else to turn. But Liu Ming's men didn't care about the newcomers' thoughts. As soon as Liu Ming opened the door and stepped out, the crowd in front of the high wall swarmed over, surrounding the sub in 3 layers. How has the shelter been these past 2 days? Liu Ming asked with a smile, taking in the familiar faces. Aside from yesterday's massive demon attack, we've only encountered a few small scared attacks, all of which were stopped by Goddess Gong, Chief Steward Ma, and their brothers. Someone in the group started to share their recent progress, and almost everyone seemed incredibly excited to have been able to independently fend off the monster attacks without Liu Ming's presence. As for the Palace Goddess and Grand Steward, as they were referred to in unison, these titles had been subtly accorded to Gong Weeksin and Ma Jun since Liu Ming designated them as the top leaders of the shelter, aside from himself. However, Gong Weeksin's icy demeanor and Ma Jun's demeanor, acting like Liu Ming's right-hand man, solidified these titles. Ma Jun, mingling with the crowd welcoming Liu Ming, smirked at him, while Gong Weeksin gazed down at him from atop the high wall. Liu Ming glanced at the height of the wall and noticed a noticeable change in the fortress he had christened the Ashes of Strength. He asked, somewhat surprised, more construction? Yes, thanks to the little devil and his 3 clay golems, they've added another meter. Not only ordinary people, but even the evolutionists were resentful of the 2 days of overtime work on the wall, with complaints echoing from the crowd. Little devil? Liu Ming wondered. Who was the little devil? At least, he hadn't heard of the title before he left the shelter. Who's talking bad about me behind my back? Before anyone could reply, Liu Ming heard a furious voice from afar. From outside the crowd, a figure shimmering in orange light, accompanied by 2 small, babbling figures, rushed in recklessly. Fatty, burn him. You've rebelled. You dare to run? Fatty, stop him. Scorch his eyebrows. It was Gong Ruohan who charged out like a demon. The 2 supposedly peace-loving flame art spirits had become accomplices. They seemed to be enjoying themselves, helping her manipulate the flames, and setting fire to the man, who had called her a little devil. Ha ha ha, Fu Cheng, remember this. I'm the great devil, not a little devil. If you keep talking behind my back, I'll have the 2 generals, Heng and Ha, burn you to death. Seeing the man's hair and eyebrows singed black, Gong Ruohan laughed triumphantly, hands on her hips. Great Demon King, hurry up, make your 2 generals stop. I'm about to be burned. The evolver named Fu Cheng shouted to stop as he scurried around in a panic, dodging the flames of the flame art spirit. Who are you calling Great Demon King? Call me Aunt. Gong Ruohan snorted coldly, his expression growing even more smug as he watched the man succumb to his authority. Seeing Fu Cheng hesitate, Gong Ruohan shouted ferociously, where are my 2 generals? Fatty, fatty, burn his butt until it's black and charred. As the flames of the art spirit approached his buttocks, his jeans began to smoke from the flames, and Fu Cheng's last bit of reserve vanished. He spinelessly shouted, Auntie, I was wrong. I was so wrong. Spare me, spare me. Ha ha ha, who are you calling? Which aunt? Your elder aunt Gong Weeksin or your younger aunt Gong Ruohan? Gong Ruohan, taking advantage of her situation, continued her teasing. Younger aunt, Gong Ruohan, please stop. My pants are about to burn through. Fu Cheng yelled, slapping the burning back pocket of his jeans. Ha ha ha. Generals Heng Ha, work harder. Burn it. Gong Ruohan, in her playful mood, showed no sign of stopping. The flames seemed fierce, but she had the temperature under control. At this temperature, it would be difficult to burn Fu Cheng, a top-level F-rank defense type evolved class. Fu Cheng placed his last hope on Liu Ming. Boss, help me. Liu Ming looked up at the sky, his expression nonchalant. As for the others, none of them cared about the drama. The better ones watched the farce with gusto, while the unscrupulous ones started to stir up trouble. Go harder, Master Gong. Miss Gong, if you burn Zio Cheng's butt black, you'll be my little boss from now on, second only to the boss in my eyes. Fu Cheng was on the verge of tears. The world is going downhill. People's hearts are no longer as they used to be. Do you, the onlookers, really want to see me streak naked? As for the newcomers to the shelter, they had already been disembarked one after another under Ma Jun's guidance. They were staring in amazement at the farce unfolding at the shelter in trance. A group of children, barely larger than the flame art spirit, gasped from time to time, almost in amazement at the orange-red flames appearing out of nowhere. Unlike the children's astonishment, the other survivors were completely stunned. Although not close, they could still clearly feel the incredible heat contained in the magical flames of the two tiny lives dancing in the air, chasing the man. Under the already scorching sun, coupled with the blast of flames, the ordinary newcomers were sweating profusely. The man being chased occasionally cried out in awe, but his expression and tone were filled with anxiety, not a trace of fear. Clearly, the flames, which were already overwhelming the heat, were nothing but commonplace to him. What shocked everyone most was that the others pouring out of the high walls, like the man, seemed to dismiss the flames as something terrifying enough to incinerate a human being. They treated them like a joke, as if they were watching a cute little girl playing a prank with a water gun, rather than setting someone on fire. Enough. A cold yet deeply moving voice rang out. With it, a sudden gust of wind descended. The gentle yet substantial pressure instantly dampened the flame's heat. All those who had been trapped in a steaming basket suddenly felt as if they had returned to the cool evening, their faces beaming with joy. The devilish girl pouted, one arm wrapped around a strange creature that had just set fire to someone, and stared disgruntled at the figure in white blocking her path. As for the little creatures in her arms, they all desperately dug their heads into her arms, as if they had met their nemesis, as if the figure in white were some sinister monster. The arrogance they had displayed when setting people on fire had vanished without a trace. Instead, they looked aggrieved, their expressions evoking pity in the uninformed. The stark contrast left the onlookers speechless. Chapter 198 The Beginning of Power, Plaza Construction. Sister, I haven't had enough fun yet. Just when the newly arrived survivors expected the beautiful figure in white to do justice to the victim, the little devil suddenly cried out in a coquettish tone, leaving them all stunned. They were sisters, so they thought they were going to have a good show. But the little devil's sister must be the big devil. She was probably no pushover either. Gong Ruohan, I've said enough. Still want to burn him to death. The beautiful figure in white didn't disappoint them, coldly interrupting the little devil's coquettish attack. However, some nasty people couldn't help but imagine, if you two sisters burn me together, I'll be happy to be burned to death. Come on, I'll be waiting. HMPH, this isn't fun. I'm leaving. Gong Ruohan was helpless against her sister, and could only walk back angrily. Liu Ming, you've been gone for almost 2 days. Where are my bricks? Where are my building materials? As Gong Ruohan was about to enter the iron gate, he suddenly stopped, as if realizing something, and turned to Liu Ming and shouted. Liu Ming was speechless, but seeing Gong Ruohan had added a meter to the wall in just 2 days, and considering his hard work, he nodded happily. Got it. Make a list of the materials you need in order, and I'll get them all to you as soon as possible. As Gong Ruohan entered the wall, Marjan asked, Boss, who are these new members of the shelter? How will we arrange them? Marjan asked. Shu Chengbing, Luo Changyan, Luo Huzi, and Fei Chenglan will be assigned as Class A combat personnel. The rest will be temporarily assigned one level below the standard for full members. However, each of them can select 5 people to form a new search team, with members assigned to Class C standards. In just a few words, Liu Ming had finalized the arrangements for everyone. Upon hearing this, Marjan and Qin Yu, the Fatikin, known as the logistics director, led their men to arrange for the hundreds of new arrivals. At the edge of the treehouse plaza, on the sandy ground used for Crazy Fist 8 styles training, Liu Ming gazed at the 600 Class C professionals standing neatly before him, and nodded in satisfaction. He turned to look at Marjan, who stood to his left, and nodded appreciatively. It seems you've trained well these past 2 days. It was clear that Marjan had applied the same training methods he'd used on his unit's spearhead warriors to these Class C professionals, resulting in a dramatic improvement in their discipline. From a motley crowd, they had become something reminiscent of a powerful army. I wonder how your strength has improved. Let me see your progress. Now, let's engage in real combat. Liu Ming shouted, changing the subject. Upon hearing Liu Ming's command, the 600 men quickly divided into 300 groups and began their one-on-one combat training. A fierce battle erupted across the not-so-narrow stretch of sand, once again deeply shocking Luo Changyuan and Shu Chengbing's men, who had just entered the shelter. The train station square was neither small nor large, but despite its size, the clash of hundreds of people could be seen clearly, regardless of their distance. However, the fighting between these individuals was far from the chaotic nature of a large-scale brawl. Instead, each individual fought against their own enemies, never intervening in the fights of those within arm's reach. Furthermore, their attacking methods resembled those of martial artists with years of experience. Not only were the ordinary people stunned, but even Liu Ming was somewhat astonished by the progress of his own men. A handful of them proved that his teaching of the 8 forms of Crazy Fist had paid off. At least 40 or 50 of them had mastered the first form, Extreme Hard and Soft Flow, through the 6th form, Water Form Hard and Soft Phase. The 7th form, Rock Hard and Soft Body, required years of practice to achieve its full potential, and the 8th form was even more challenging. To master these 2 moves so quickly and apply them in combat is definitely not something you could describe as a genius. It's a legendary prodigy. So Liu Ming initially held out little hope, but by the end of the battle, he had confirmed that 2 individuals had mastered both moves. Among them, the one who had mastered the Rock Hard and Soft Body was a muscular man, over 1.9 meters tall, with an abnormally bulging physique. His back and chest muscles were as strong as cracked rock, each one a ravine of muscle. His opponent was a reserve member of the search team, of similar height, but far more agile. He had also mastered the first 6 moves of the Crazy Fist. However, each of this reserve member's attacks struck him like hitting a stone wrapped in tough cowhide, making a thud but barely injuring him. He fell increasingly into a defensive position, gradually being suppressed to the point of suffering. The difference between the 2 was immediately apparent, and the outcome was certain. As for the other man who caught Liu Ming's attention, a young man of modest stature and appearance, his opponent was noticeably stronger and taller, and surprisingly, just as fast. Just when anyone witnessing their fight thought victory was tipping toward his opponent, he surprisingly managed to dodge the blows by the tiniest hairline. Even more astonishing, he always managed to simultaneously land a punch or kick while dodging. This was undoubtedly the dynamic hard-soft technique that enhances evasive ability. 10 minutes later, Liu Ming called a halt to the sparring session. You, what's your name? He asked, pointing at the 2 men who had just stunned him. Boss, my name is Zhang Ziyan. Boss, my name is Guangcheng. Seeing Liu Ming pointing at them, the 2 knew their days of hard work had paid off. They excitedly shouted, fearing someone else would steal their credit. Zhang Ziyan was the man with the sturdy build of a stone giant. The other, agile-looking young man was Guangcheng. You 2, you've learned well, Ma Jun. Their ranks will be raised 1 level, Liu Ming said, admiringly observing the 2 men. Looking at the 2 men, who were now even more excited, and the others, who were panting and sweating profusely after their recent combat training, Liu Ming continued, there are another 40 or 50 people whose performance has earned my approval. I've made note of you. If your performance in the next combat meets my expectations, your compensation will be increased. With that, Liu Ming turned and left the training ground, handing the training task over to Ma Jun. After just 2 days away from the shelter, he felt a sense of utter disrepair. He didn't want his shelter to become a veritable refugee camp like the East Safe Zone as its population grew. Early planning and construction were imperative. Chapter 199, Specialization in the Field, Building a Great Construction Project, Part 1. Looking at the entire train station square, surrounded by high walls, its length and width less than 500 meters, totaling no more than 200,000 square meters, Liu Ming felt a pang of frustration. With such a small area, 3,000 people might be the limit, any more would be packed like sardines in a can. Already, the shelters were accommodating over 2,000 residents, and with this new arrival, the limit of 3,000 was steadily approaching. By then, new refugee camps would be as crowded as those in the Eastern Safe Zone. If only he had known earlier when building the Wall of Ashes, he would have enclosed more land and built more sections of walls. However, regrets were now futile. Finding a way to accommodate more survivors within this limited space was the top priority. Liu Ming's vision and plan was for his territory to become a standardized fortress capable of accommodating at least 10,000 people. With these tens of thousands, He will build a complete industrial and hardware infrastructure, achieving true self-sufficiency in all materials. This would lay the foundation for his future dominance in the Wuling region. This ambitious goal was by no means achievable with the current, limited manpower and personnel structure. As he pondered this, Liu Ming arrived at Gong Weixin's location. The goddess clutched her ever-present divine grace sword, standing guard atop a stone fortress's arrow tower, like a lone swordsman, feeling the loneliness of heights. Liu Ming had no idea how Gong Weixin had reached the 8 or 9 meter high tower. Perhaps she had used the wind breath swordsman's ability to manipulate the wind to directly leap there, but at least with her jumping ability and explosive power, she couldn't have done it directly. A pair of fiery red wings, as vibrant as a dream, slowly unfolded from Liu Ming's back, and with a single flap, he soared to the top of the tower. Liu Ming gently stood behind Gong Weixin, and she finally snapped out of her rapt gaze. She looked at Liu Ming, who had already arrived behind her. Her expression remained calm, though a flicker of emotion flickered in her eyes. With a hint of surprise, she asked, "Why are you here?" "I need to talk to you about something," Liu Ming replied succinctly. "Tell me. Last time, I asked you to compile a list of Class B professionals with special skills. How's that going?" Upon hearing this, Gong Weixin remained as aloof as ever. She said nothing more. A gust of wind enveloped her, and she landed with a few leaps as light as a swallow. As she landed, a distant voice reached Liu Ming's ears. "Follow me." Liu Ming followed suit, leaping from the stone fort tower. This stunned the newly arrived residents of the square who were watching nearby. King Gong? As for the older residents who had already witnessed Liu Ming and Gong Weixin's numerous abilities and methods, they were no longer surprised. They knew these two masters were eccentrics, masters beyond common sense. Gong Weixin and Liu Ming entered the main gate of the Wall of Ashes and headed straight for the Treehouse Villa, the most prominent structure in the plaza. This was where Liu Ming and several high-ranking members of the shelter lived. Once inside, Gong Weixin retrieved a white leather notebook with an electronic lock from her room and handed it to Liu Ming. Accepting the notebook, still warm from her hand, Liu Ming was inwardly amazed, thinking this woman was incredibly particular, even keeping such high standards for her notes. "I've registered all the people with the skills we need. They're in this notebook. The password is 206,748, Gong Weixin explained calmly. Liu Ming nodded, unlocked the electronic lock, and flipped through the pages. Gong Weixin had initially screened and confirmed that 46 people met Liu Ming's requirements. Most of these 46 had mediocre resumes, barely meeting Liu Ming's requirements, and not attracting his attention. Only 4 of them caught his attention. Zhao Hangyan, male, 47 years old, attending physician in the emergency department of Wuling Central Hospital. Professor and Deputy Director of the Clinical Department of Wuling University School of Medicine, Cardiovascular Disease Specialist, and Doctor of Medicine from the University of Hong Kong. He is married, and has a wife and a son. His son is out of town, and his wife is a Class D general employee. After verification, his personal information is generally accurate, and has been designated as a Class B professional. Liu Chunan, male, 31 years old, associate professor in the Department of Materials Science at Wuling University, holds a PhD in Materials Science from Yenching University. He has made significant contributions to the fields of specialty alloys and synthetic ceramics, and has published extensively. The Module 11th protective ceramic he led in development has been designated a specialty military material for individual bulletproof plate production by the Xiangnan Changjian Military Factory, and has been designated a Class B professional. Jia Jianjun, female, 30 years old, is an associate professor in the Department of Biology at Zhangzhang University and a visiting professor at Wuling University. She holds a master's degree in biology from Columbia University and a doctorate in biology from California Institute of Technology. She holds a significant influence in the province's biological community in cell biology, botany, and genetics. Several of her papers have been published in prestigious journals such as Nature and Science, including on the role of biological structure in genetics, factors inducing plant mutation, and on the inevitable link between genetics and human lifespan, all of which have been designated Category B. After meeting these three individuals, Liu Ming was already satisfied with Gong Weixin's findings, especially the last biological prodigy, which made him even more excited. Although most people today view these scientists as mere ordinary people, seemingly helpless beings fleeing monster prey, they actually still play a significant role. The astonishingly rapid evolution of future generations of powerful humans is closely linked to them, and their role is absolutely indispensable. Evolution, ultimately, is the transformation and optimization of the human body structure, from macroscopic to microscopic. The role that geneticists can play in this is obvious, assuming this geneticist is a true scholar, not just a so-called expert dispelling rumors. However, Liu Ming harbored a doubt. He looked at Gong Weixin, who stood expressionless, and asked, "Did you write it wrong? Jianjun, female?" "Yes, she's a female doctor," Gong Weixin replied with certainty. Liu Ming was speechless, unable to complain about the naming skills. He didn't even consider that his own name wasn't much better. According to the orphanage's director, who named him, he was picked up at a time when the setting sun and the new moon were rising simultaneously. Seeing the sun and moon rise together, the director slapped his thigh and instantly decided to name him Liu Sun and Moon. Because the director's surname was Liu, most of the children in the orphanage shared the surname Liu. However, he later felt that the name was too unconventional and didn't fit in with the orphanage's custom of giving children humble names to keep them entertained. So, he combined the sun and moon and named him Liu Ming. Liu Ming had long forgotten this dark history. He was looking through Gong Weixin's notes when he saw the fourth person whose resume had caught his attention. He owed 10 chapters and could only pay them back slowly. Chapter 200, Specialization in the Field, Building a Great Construction Project, Part 2. Yinzin Meng, male, 34 years old, Chief Architect of the Wuling Construction Engineering Group, General Design Institute, Chief Designer of Wuling Construction Engineering, holds a master's degree in civil engineering from Xiangnan University. He has been engaged in architectural design for 10 years and is a nationally renowned architect. He is the designer of the Quaileg at the Wuling Gymnasium, a landmark building in Wuling City. He won the 2015 Emerging Architect Award at the influential Rising Sun Architecture Awards in the national architectural profession, and has been designated a Category B. "It's time for major construction," Liu Ming exclaimed, looking at the rather feminine name of Yinzin Meng. A moment later, "Boss, you're looking for me?" A tall, thin man stood before Liu Ming, looking puzzled. Liu Ming looked at a burly, ferocious-looking search team member under Liu Huchun, who had come to find Yinzin Meng as he had instructed. He waved his hand at the man, indicating that his mission was complete and he could leave. Then he turned his gaze to Yinzin Meng. Yinzin Meng's expression of doubt revealed a hint of unease. After all, anyone would be a little nervous to have such a ferocious man brought in like a criminal to face the legendary Boss Liu and Boss Gong. If he'd been invited here for something good, why would there be such a grandiose three-person trial? Looking at Boss Liu's stiff face and Boss Gong's frosty face, he felt the summer heat drop a few degrees. But why was his back and forehead sweating? Was it cold sweat or a sweaty sweat? It was Liu Ming's fault for not considering the proper etiquette of society. He had simply found someone to fetch Yinzin Meng, completely disregarding the proper manners for inviting someone in, and had made the visitor suspicious. However, his next words immediately eased Yinzin Meng's somewhat uneasy heart. "Relax, I asked you to come here because I have something for you to do. I heard you're a senior architect." Liu Ming, seeing Yinzin Meng's uneasy expression, broke the silence and asked. Yinzin Meng clearly hadn't expected Liu Ming to call her in because of her profession. After a moment's pause, she replied, "I'm not exactly experienced, I just have some architectural design experience." "I said you're experienced, and I'm experienced. With over 1,000 people in this shelter, who dares claim to be more experienced than you? What I'm asking you to do is related to your job, architecture. There's no need to be so self-deprecating," Liu Ming said, a smile tugging at the man before him who could help him realize his plans. Yinzin Meng's heart surged at Liu Ming's words, and he quickly patted his chest and promised, Thank you for your kindness, boss. I'll do my best to complete whatever you ask of me. Since the end of the catastrophe, he'd been in 3 shelters. The first one's leader had become psychotic under the constant threat of monsters, and his harsh demands practically drove those outside his direct line of descent to despair. Ultimately, he escaped with his wife and some other survivors, seeking alternative livelihoods, and moved to the second shelter. This was the underground garage shelter Gong Weeksin had previously led, making him one of the survivors Liu Ming had rescued from the purple vine corpse demon's clutches. Overall, he was deeply grateful for Liu Ming's life-saving grace, and after having experienced various shelters, he had a strong preference for the train station as a refuge. Very good. What do you think of the current building conditions of our shelter? Given the area within the wall of ashes, how many people can it accommodate at most? Liu Ming unleashed a barrage of questions, all of which were currently being addressed. Boss, when I first arrived at our shelter, I visually estimated the total area within the wall of ashes. The magical treehouse forest square at the train station is 400 meters long and 300 meters wide, respectively. The ticket hall, waiting room, and the train station and trackside platforms total approximately 190,000 to 200,000 square meters. I roughly counted the total number of tree houses. There are over 230 in total, including 170 small tree houses that can accommodate 3 people, 42 medium-sized tree houses that can accommodate 7 to 10 people, 19 large tree houses that can accommodate 16 to 20 people. And the super large treehouse villa where you live, boss. If all of these tree houses were used, they could accommodate 1,200 to 1,300 people. In addition, the ticket hall, waiting room, offices, and shops inside the train station can accommodate nearly 2,000 people. If we want to accommodate more than 3,000 people, the shelter's current size will be difficult. With the current building plan, it might become a refugee camp. Yan Meng paused, glancing at Liu Ming's face, fearing he might be displeased. To his surprise, Liu Ming nodded in agreement, looking at him with admiration. I also estimate that our shelter is maximuming out at 3,000, which is why I asked you to come here. I hope we can redesign it and make full use of the relatively safe areas within the wall of ashes. Upon hearing this, Yan Meng understood why he had been granted a private meeting with Liu Ming. He tentatively asked, "Boss, how do you intend to utilize it?" Under current conditions, there are only 2 ways to solve the housing problem and accommodate a larger population. One is to expand the space upwards, building tall buildings, but this is simply impossible with current manpower and resources. The other is to dig underground, creating a subterranean space similar to a basement or air raid shelter. This was relatively easy to accomplish, but 2 key aspects remained challenging. One was excavation. Without excavators and explosives, manually digging an air raid shelter might sound like a pipe dream, but it wasn't impossible. It would simply be time consuming and difficult to complete quickly. Another challenge was the lack of reinforced concrete, making it difficult to support the underground structure. Even if it were constructed, it could easily collapse under severe vibrations or unexpected events, such as a monster attack, crushing the survivors underground like a meat bun. That's why he wanted to first ask Liu Ming what his plans were, and then, based on his ideas, formulate a specific plan. There are plenty of monsters that fly in the sky, and plenty that burrow underground. I don't want to go too high, and I don't want to go too low. We'll just use the space within a 10-meter plane. We can't go above this height, and we can't go below this depth. Do you have any suggestions? Liu Ming offered his thoughts, handing over the design to Yan Meng. Yan Meng is the supporting role of Xin Mengayan, an old brother who has always supported Feng Shi. Haha, I have been too lazy recently and too lazy to come up with a name, so Xin Mengayan is just called Yan Meng. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.